o'clock. I avoided it. I would not be
And
surprised.
food.
27 going west, 130. 130. Yeah, I kind of was thinking about that.
So which way is number?
280, 880.
We can pull them now.
And then location the text us. We only like to start on time, but given the traffic count, we can wait a couple more minutes. Is that okay? Apparently, there is a football game going on. It may have delayed some people.
Yeah, today it was like in a bit more traffic.
Yeah, I have the class just for you.
क्या तुमने प्रिंट नहीं करा था? या
नहीं आपने प्रिंट कराया था वो
घर आ गया.
Focus. This camera will
Okay, so lapel mic लगा दिया?
no, we haven't tested yet.
लगा तो क्या? ठीक है.
This is not clear.
You want to try it? Otherwise, voice issue, especially for the
Sita ji, are you able to hear this clearly? Just nod your head. We see you. We'll go little mic down. I think this is working. Right? This is the
Audio
microphone
is
being
happening
used.
from this.
This is doing the audio.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so you're not using this at all?
No.
But उसमें थोड़ा muffled रहता है online when I see it. Yeah, because
Okay.
it was not pairing up still. It's still not working.
No.
Oh. Get that idea.
Yeah, this one is working.
But that, the audio works well for the remote location?
Yeah, they are able to catch it. Lata ji, we can check if she is able to hear us. Sita ji, can you hear us all right?
Hello, we need little more volume. Hi, this is Sita Hario.
Hi, can you hear us all right?
No, we need little more volume. It's not enough.
Let's try this.
So, but how do you switch to this?
So
Can you hear us now?
that is supposed to be. So the issue we were having was this just doesn't get recognized in any of our devices.
Hario.
It will start to take that video as the speaker's video.
Yeah, this is nice.
That's fine. We can change that.
But it will not change.
We can change the recording of this as mic.
It's better now.
Okay,
Thank you.
Gaurav, it is better now.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Whatever works.
I'll just increase the- I know,
User feedback is not always.
but
I'm
that's
not
not
gonna
how
make
it's
you
all
feel guilty by saying we put up the classes.
What is it?
So let's get started then. Namaskar and welcome to session 5 of the CHT program. I think most of you were here in the last session. The last session with Dr. Pullman Singh, we focused on the skills required for counseling, and the major areas that he spoke about were active listening skills, empathy, emotional intelligence, and then also I think Prasad made a point about suspending judgment. You can listen to them and start forming your opinions. The key thing was to understand your client before you diagnose them. So today we're going to shift gears a little bit and now get at the spiritual part. So both Vijay Kapoorji and Dr. Prasad Thakurji will talk about the core tenets of Hinduism, and then right after that we'll follow up with how to apply the key principles from there in applying Bhagavad Gita to the counseling issues that you're going to face. I think they've all been introduced the first session itself, and I think many of you know them. I'll just give a brief summary. Vijay Kapoorji has an extensive experience, 25 years at IBM and HP. Before he took early retirement from HP, as he was a pretty senior director there, or vice president, I'm not sure.
No, not vice president.
Okay. And then really dedicated his life to spirituality and Vedanta. He has he teaches classes at the Asha Vidya Center, which is right here. And he's going to be focusing a lot on the core tenets of Hinduism to start off with. He has an engineering degree from University of Berkeley, California, Berkeley, right here, and an MBA from University of Santa Clara. And Dr. Prasad Kaikar has spent a lot of time in research, teaching, and consulting. He's written a couple of books, co-authored a couple of books. The key one, which I've read also, is the one says from smart to wise, and that also uses extensively the teachings or principles from the Gita, in terms of how to apply that to corporate life, and he uses that in going on consulting to large organizations, both here as well as worldwide. And he'll be talking to some of that today. He has a PhD in physics from IIT Chennai, and by the way, he was a fellow at Apple University. And again, he's trying to bring in the principles of Bhagavad Gita, the physics and spirituality, and bring it all together. So I'm looking for an exciting session. With that, I'll turn it over to Vijay. And he will lead us with the Shanti Path and then the brief photo session.
Let us do a prayer. Do you do that at the same time, or do you follow either one? Om Sahanavatu Sahanau Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। नमस्ते अस्तु भगवन् विश्वेश्वराय महादेवाय त्र्यम्बकाय त्रिपुरान्तकाय त्रिकालाग्निकालाय कालाग्निरुद्राय नीलकण्ठाय मृत्युञ्जयाय सर्वेश्वराय सदाशिवाय श्रीमन्महादेवाय नमः. My namaste to all of you. I'm very happy to be here today. We're looking forward to this excellent session on discussions and feedback from you and understanding on, as Satish ji said, on the core principles of Hinduism, which is really what should drive the personality of the Hindu Community Institute. Very happy to partner with Dr. Prasad, and he has just landed from San Jose into San Jose. I'm very happy that he's on time. So let me take the opportunity of just starting things off, and then I will invite him to also to participate. One thing I would like to say is that please interrupt me anytime. This should be a interactive session. Normally in the teaching of Vedanta, we don't do that. So you do the whole pravachan for an hour, hour and a half, and then invite for questions. But for this, I think it is important to make it very interactive. So I'm really looking forward to it. So just raise your hands if you don't understand something. I would say that if you wanted to express some ideas different from what has been presented, perhaps you can hold off until we have a later session in about an hour and a half, 2 hours or so. So we'll have plenty of time for doing that. But your questions should hopefully be limited to what we are currently discussing in the next hour or so. So that being the case, let me present the agenda very briefly. See how this remote thing works. Aha, beautiful. It's easy. So, slight change in our agenda. We were hoping that Swamini Swatma Vidyananda will actually be here. And if she was not going to be here, she was going to be here online. But she had another commitment that came up that she didn't know about. She's teaching at the ashram at the moment in our Sailor'sburg ashram. And there's a huge crowd of about 200-300 people that she has to teach. So she begged her absence.
So that's Sailor'sburg, Pennsylvania?
Yes, Sailor'sburg, Pennsylvania, exactly. So I had one question before I get started on the agenda, because that will influence how we do that. You know, we sent all this material to you a few days ago. How many of you had a chance to review that?
Briefly.
Briefly, I understand.
I just read like 6 pages.
Okay, so that will give me some ideas, that give us both of some ideas that if you want to be someplace where you're visible, I'm standing right ahead.
And we can see him.
Okay.
In room. Oh, in room. Camera can see.
Very good, excellent. So I think I'll refer to some of the notes there as well.
Got it.
But we have summarized the points that we had come up with in some slide form so that will give you plenty of time to ask questions and so on. So our agenda is now as follows. Instead of Swamiji actually going to be here in person, she has offered an article which I think I sent you. And that article is useful to me personally because it's an independent view of what she thinks about the Hindu principles and the Hindu literature and the way it should be presented. I just wanted her to do that in her eyes, in her language and so on, and to see if there is consonance between what Prasad and I are going to talk about and what she. I'm very happy that it pretty much does. So I was very happy about that. And so we will summarize her points for her in about 10 minutes or so. Then I will take about an hour to summarize the tenets of Hinduism as I see them from my own life. And as Satish had pointed out earlier, I was very fortunate really to get into an introduction on the Hindu principles at the age of about 32, 33. And it really changed my life. And I must say that Ishvara has been so kind to me because before that time, I was not a happy person. I was successful, but not happy. And I didn't know why I was not happy. And it's always an invitation. You need to have some, you're not quite at peace with yourself to inquire further. And that's what happened to me. And that led to a journey with Swami Chinmayananji and Swami Dayanandji and Swami Maheswaranji more recently, where I have really gotten into the depth of this. And I can say that I'm a lot happier. I'm not quite where I want to be, but I am much happier. And so the reason I'm saying that is because these principles of Hinduism, to me, are not theoretical. They are real for me. They're real for me to participate in and to communicate it with the others. And this is what I've been doing. I started with about 15 students in my home in 1985, and it has grown now to a point where people like the subject matter as we present, we discuss it, and we now have about 150 students in 3 classes per week. And we have pretty much covered all of the Upanishads, with the exception, of course, of Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka. Those are huge Upanishads. You cannot cover them in a short time. Maybe a chapter here and there, but we have taken Kena, Katha, Taittiriya, Mundaka, and now we are doing Mandukya. We have studied Bhagavad Gita at least 3 or 4 times, different chapters, and one now we are in a complete review of the Bhagavad Gita from start to finish. And so I'm very familiar with that. I've taught Bhagavad Gita about a dozen or 15 times in the last 25 years. So it's been a personal quest for me. And it's not something that I just want to teach as a theoretical subject, because the lessons of life have been very real for me. And I just want to communicate that to my students as well. And so that's the background that I'm coming from. So what I'd like to do with that is to just give you a gist of some of the principles that underlie the basic Hindu thoughts that we have presented. So this is the next 60 minutes or so. Then I think we will now open up for participation and discussion. And Prasad, you have some specific ideas on the next section, and perhaps you can articulate in your own words what you thought about the group discussion and the next part of it, and then we will close off.
Sure. What we thought was, because these are about how you can be an effective counselor. So these principles are not just about understanding what it is, but without the fundamental understanding of these tenets, our practices that emerge out of it. If you have questions with respect to people from other religions, people from other traditions, then we may be able to say what needs to be done as somebody else told, but may not understand the underlying principles and values. Why do we do that? What is it that needs to be done? So from that perspective, what we thought was, we will actually take every tenet and various things which we have, we will ground it back into practical life. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are a software engineer, if you are a homemaker, if you are a medical doctor, it doesn't matter what you are trying to do. All of these, as Vijay just said, they are about practicing it day to day. And so for that, we have some group discussion which we have planned, and then we will actually take it into how they become practical. We will take it through questions and answers, as well as your own conversations that we have. And I have small presentation on that aspect of it. We will go through that as it is appropriate as well. Please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So with that, let us go into Swamini Ji's presentation, which I sent you, and I will refer to it in the next 10 minutes or so. We'll go from there. Before I get started, I'd like to just say that my thinking in putting all this thing together along with Prasad Ji is that this is a review for you. We expect all of you are very familiar with Hindu principles. It's not as though we are presenting it to you for the first time. That's not the case. But I think it's useful to kind of put it all together at one place and to discuss so that you can articulate it to your people and the people that you'll be meeting with it in a very concise way and refer to it. We're going to give you, I'm not sure that we've finished that, but we're going to give you a lot of reference material that you can actually read from our recommendations. So consider this as a review more than an initial teaching of any kind. So now let's start with Swamini Ji's article. She very rightly points out, the first 2 points are very interesting. Hinduism, as you know, is not a dogmatic religion. It is not so clear-cut that you can read in a single source of some literature and then grasp it. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is the first one. And that is, it stems from, we will talk about that later, from Vedas. The meaning of the word Veda, which stems from the root vid, meaning to know, the meaning of the word Vedas is knowledge of life. Knowledge of yourself, of course. Knowledge of things around you. And the knowledge of why are we here? What is the purpose? What is the vision? And to fulfill that vision, what should be your way of life? This is the comprehensive treatment of life itself, all experiences. And it gives you, the Vedas give you the advice, the vision, the recommendations, support. So it's a very comprehensive set of documents and supporting documents. This is what Hinduism is. And so the first thing it points out, and we'll go through this, I may have to repeat myself a few times. The vision is total freedom from all problems in life. This is the vision. This is what we all have to achieve. No problems.
That's a universal vision, right?
Sorry?
That's a universal.
It's a universal vision. Another thing is, as part of the universal vision, it's the vision of achieving that in this life itself. Not possibly shared. A lot of schools of thought say that you have to wait. This life is miserable. Put up with it somehow or the other. Do the right things. They all say the right things and so on. But you may have to wait. Hinduism goes a little further. And it says you're very fortunate to be born as human beings. Not easy to do that. Use this precious time to discover total freedom right here in this life. If you fail to do it, no problem. You'll get some more chances. But why not do it? So in that sense, the vision is much clearer and takes it to the ultimate aim, which is what we call Satyamukti, that we will see that later on, versus Kramamukti. That's the vision of the Hinduism. So with that in mind, the Vedas are segmented into two parts. Yeah.
That second bullet there, I guess, would it be fair to say if the word dogmatic was, taken out of there? Would that be still a correct statement?
Not, you mean if you were to take the word dogmatic and organized out of there?
We just take out the word dogmatic. Is it an organized religion?
No, no, it's not an organized religion.
Okay, so dogmatic or not, it's not an organized.
Not an organized religion for a purpose. And that is that the people are all different. Just because we are human beings doesn't mean that we all are homogeneous in our understanding. There are people who have just arrived in the humanness. There are people who have been there for a long time. And so you need to have a very comprehensive. And so this is why, for example, we will talk about that later on, that if you want to worship snakes, do so. Because they are important in your life. You are threatened by them. And so I remember, just as a side thing, I hope I don't get digressed too much. I went to our Swamiji's ashram, the one that I belong to in Coimbatore. And on that day, they were having a puja to a cobra. And so I asked, why is this going on? What happened was that there was a visitor to the ashram who killed a cobra a couple of days ago, prior to that. This was not okay, because that person thought this is a dangerous snake and didn't want to come near his, so he just killed it. Our feeling was, this is not the right thing. It is their place, it is our place, we have to live together. And so they did a complete puja for the snakes for doing that. Similarly for the wild elephants, we are in them. Anyway, the point is that there is such diversity of acceptance of the Hinduism, tribal areas, people with education, without education, that you cannot make it so organized that this is what you have to do. That's not necessary, and it is not done.
Yeah. In fact, I had a choice to remove words there. I would have removed organized religion, because it's totally unorganized, but every one of us has the liberty to do certain things the way we see fit. And that's why he was saying that you can you can pray to a snake. Understand? All I'm saying is,
The word that he's using, dogmatic. Yeah, I
dogmatic
understand.
has a negative. No, not a dogmatic. No, understand. What I'm saying, the word dogmatic to me is kind of negative.
Yes, no, I
And
understand.
when you say organized, they're all kind of two totally independent. So I would say not dogmatic.
These are Swamiji's words, and I took it as it is.
Right.
And I think those points are well taken.
And that's
So-
not dogmatic and not organized.
And not organized.
It's not organized. religion.
Yes,
Both.
exactly.
It's not an organized religion, it's not a dogmatic.
That's correct.
That's correct. So the Vedas are divided into two main parts. So the first part, what is called Karma Kanda, and also the word Purva Mimamsa is used, that will come out later on. Here, the primary emphasis is on doing, karma para, kriya para. And in doing, the understanding is secondary, and the right way to do things is primary. Very much like if you were to teach a child, a 1-year-old child who was just barely learning to stand, to do namaste. And so the mother and father, all the Hindus, they say, Beta, namaste karo, namaste karo. The fellow beta doesn't know what namaste is, what to do. He says, what? He says, fold your hands like this. So the fellow folds his hands. He says, say namaste, namaste, or something like that. So here it is on doing, not understanding. That comes later. When you grow up and you do namaste with your hands folded, it is the most beautiful greeting in the whole wide world. Why? Because we are walking around with our own thoughts, and as soon as we meet someone, we need to drop those thoughts and focus on the individual in front of us. It is best done with both hands folded together, so it leads the mind to say, pay attention to this fellow. This is the meaning of Namaste. But that comes later, much later, if ever. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all, but certainly not in the time of doing. The Vedas is exactly the same way. Through rituals, through prayers, and technical prayers. It was very interesting. Swami Dayananji, my teacher, used to say this. He says, you know, the rituals of Vedas compared to the actions of the human beings outside of the Vedas are like classical music versus filmy music. Filmy music will also do. You can just do action without any instructions, without any rituals, without any technical advice. But if you were to learn the ragas, the swaras, it is much more effective, much more pleasant, much more peaceful. So these rituals of the first part of the Karma Kanda are very effective.
So I have a question. So most of the other religions also have a similar kind of thing. Like now, they also have rituals. Need not be understood by everyone.
So that's fine. I don't.
How it's different? I'm just trying to understand how
So-
it's presented in a different way in Vedas.
So I think that it may not be different. We don't know because I've not studied everything, and I'm not sure that I can answer that question that well. All I'm saying is that it is very well put together. Another thing which is distinguishes, this is something that we're going to look at it differently. We consider Vedas to be apaurushaya.
Sorry, about
Means not done by human beings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vijayji, maybe I can add
Yeah.
this one. The rituals and practices are there, as you rightly say, in other religions. Only thing is, there is a certain way in which those rituals have to be followed for you to actually achieve what you are supposed to achieve.
There is it, you mean?
Yeah, there is a certain rigidity, there is a structure, there is a dogma associated with certain ways of doing it. Here, for example, even when you do puja or any of them, they say palam, patram, pushpam, toyam. Whether you do it through the fruit, or if you are doing a puja, a ritual, for example, there were Devi puja and all of them. If you can put it, you can put a golden statue. If you can't, do it with a silver, copper, do it with a mud. If you can't put any of them, just worship and think about and then do it. All of them are acceptable. That means our rituals have a certain flexibility and fluidity, and they incorporate not just in the doing, but who is doing and how it is being done. So from that perspective, the vision that you have, that is being done through the action. But it is not just the action that comes through, though as a child, you first start with the discipline and action. Over a time, you begin to discover it. That part of it is missing in many of the religions because they are organized, structured, and that is where the dogma begins to build. This is what you are supposed to do. If you don't do this, then you have missed a certain element. You have missed something else. So the freedom for us to choose different roles, different karmas, different rituals gives us an ability to achieve the same result, even if you have missed some. For example, that's why when the priests come in, sometimes these days they say, do you want a 2-hour puja or 1-hour puja or half an hour puja? Depending on the money that you do. What is that? That means there is a certain essence that can be communicated without having to go through the entire set of rituals. That kind of flexibility and fluidity is what makes us to say that it is not organized in a structure and it is not dogmatic in the mindset, and also it gives you the certain way in which those rituals start the process. but they are not the process by themselves. Please.
Yeah.
May I intervene in connection with what he said? In the Gita, Krishna says one sentence, I mean, that encompasses all. Sarva dharman parityajya mamaikam sharanam praja aham tvam sarva papabhyo mokshishyami. Meaning, you don't have to do anything, no rituals, nothing, no, whatever you follow is
Sir,
fine.
if you don't mind, can you stay with where we are?
Yeah, that's what.
Don't bring anything else right now.
No,
I'm just suggesting, don't bring anything else. Just stay with it, because we want to bring a vision in a particular way, and then we'll introduce it, if you don't mind. Thank you. Please, Vijayji.
So this also continues on to the second part of the Vedas. So one thing that the first part of the Vedas, the Karma Kanda, does. So there are two aspects of the freedom, the achievement of freedom that is believed, that is represented, not believed, I should use words carefully, is represented by Hinduism. And that is, number one is Shraddha, not belief, but Shraddha. If we want to translate Shraddha into English, it should be called verifiable belief.
Verifiable belief. As opposed to faith.
As opposed to pure belief. An example would be that suppose you have a daughter who wants to be a theoretical physicist, and she is 13 years old. She is in 7th or 8th grade. And somehow she has found out that theoretical physicists are the best. And so you tell her E is equal to mc squared, that, she doesn't understand any of this. But she believes that one day I will be able to understand. And she's absolutely right. It is not E is equal to mc squared, it is not a pure belief. It is a verifiable truth, but you don't understand it yet. And so Shraddha is a very important aspect of it. And the achievement of Shraddha is the primary objective of the first part of the Vedas, Karma Kanda. Then, once the qualifications of the individual comes up to a certain stage, through a lifetime of all the four Purusharthas, then Dharma is the final gateway to Jnana. And Dharma means the right way to live in your life. How not to cut corners, not to yield to untruth, speaking truth, being kind to others, all of those, everybody has the same kind of a thing. But there is a certain structure in this which leads to what we call mental maturity, not physical maturity, but mental maturity. And the primary ingredient of mental maturity is sharing and looking at others' dukkhas as well as your own, and to become much more ethical and much more giving and much more forgiving in your life. Those kinds of qualities are essential for you to understand your own self and to communicate to the society. This is what we call the mental maturity. This is the objective of Karma Kanda. Then comes the second part of the Vedas, which transcends Shraddha into Jnana. And so here, this is a complete science from ground up. Just like if you're going to become a specialist in a field like in medicine or in law or engineering, you have to start with biology 101. What are the constituents? How does the blood flow? What is the effect of the muscles? All of that. What is the human being made out of? So if you want to communicate some very tough diseases, you have to be able to understand the very structure of the human being. Vedanta is exactly like this. That's what really impressed me when I first met our Mahatmas. They said this can be learned element by element, structure by structure. It is not something, where this is just a kind of like a vague idea of what you can do. To me, with my background, with my scientific background, it was very attractive and it has come true, totally come true. You can really construct the whole thing by its constituent parts. This is what the second part of the Vedas do. And we will talk about the literature that's available for you to do so. So this is what characterizes Hindu.
I think I didn't completely understand. So you mentioned the first part is Karma Kanda.
Yes.
So we achieve the Karma Kanda through Shraddha and Dharma, right? That's what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is first part of the Karma Kanda.
Yes.
So second part is, can you repeat what is the second part of
The second part is Jnana.
Jnana?
Jnana Kanda.
Okay, Jnana.
Jnana Kanda.
Thank you.
And so knowledge. And the knowledge of what? Knowledge. So this is what we are going to do next when I spend the more time, the 1 hour. So we will actually talk about what are the elements of the knowledge. Knowledge of myself, knowledge of the world, God, knowledge of Ishvara, the relationship between all of them. This is what constitutes the second part of the Vedas, which is Jnana. Just for, sorry, yeah.
I was going to say, I guess, when you look at it that way, the Karam Khan and the Gyan Khanda, and then you say, maybe that's not the right word, I guess, that you have to have, I guess, belief to accept the rituals in the first place without questioning, right? That's the way I understand.
Not the way that Prasad was pointing out. That's exactly.
No, I understand. What I took from your explanation, that there is that fluidity, there's the choices. Yeah. But you have to know all that up front to be able to, if somebody says, do this ritual, and this is the way to do it, this is the right way to do it, and at the same time, if you don't do it this way, this is not the right way to do it. See, that's where.
Okay, so may I interject one thing? I think we are overdoing the word ritual. Not that necessary. The primary, I would say that the key word in the first part of Vedas is attitude. The right attitude. So there, from that standpoint, for a grihastha, for a householder, having artha and kama, having your security and a sense of fun in life is the number one part that you should do. So that should not be that later on when you become 45, 50 and so on and so forth, dharma should start getting your attention. Right. So all of that is attitude. None of the rituals really are endemic to the whole thing. Yeah. Now we are overdoing the word ritual. Rituals can be done for accelerating the growth of the individual.
I probably wandered away from the main point that I wanted to bring up was basically, I put myself, in front of my son who's 10 years old, 12 years old, or whatever. And I say, you do this because this is the way to do it. And, on the other hand, when they go to school, they are taught, question everything. Why are we doing it? If you don't understand it, don't do it. I have to have that wherewithal to be able to explain to him or her.
Yes.
Say, hey, this is where the background is. If I don't have it, it becomes basically, I'm not going to do it.
And I think we will touch on this point a little bit later on pujas.
Right, same thing.
So hold on that point. We will again give some more commentary on that. Any other points on that? So that is the structure of the Vedas. That so really basically the belief until knowledge are the two parts of one's life. This is where the moksha is highly likely. So again, you're right. We all have challenges of being able to get our 10-year-olds to do. But I think that we will see why a repetition without understanding is a very key part of it. It is a very important part of it. Because if the child has not been told to do namaste at all, suddenly to do namaste when you are 23 is not going to happen. Not going to happen.
And also, to add to that, even the latest neurology, brain research, even physiology tells us there are certain things which you learn at a certain age. If you teach music for a child before they are age 4 or 5, something else, their ability to do the mathematics becomes a lot easier because of the rhythm, because of the raga, because of the scale, all of that. Just like that, there are certain things which are developmental in nature. So the idea is not just about by itself that has to be perfect. By doing it at a certain time, even if you don't understand it, it's like whether you understand the food or not, your stomach is going to get hungry. Why you eat, whether you know carbohydrates or proteins or fats, or it doesn't matter. When you are eating whatever without knowing the process of it. Just like, hold on for a minute. Just like that, the rituals, when you do certain things, when you talk to your kid, you may need to get them to do certain things, and by the way, they may not do it, and it's okay. That flexibility gives us, because as Vijayji was mentioning, it is called darshana. The idea is the vision. The first statement which you have is the vision. To be able to have that vision. You can arrive at it in many different ways, but most powerful is to go through the karma kanda. Vedas say you do that. And after you get used to certain practices, then you will begin to think about, like for example, for past few days I was in Midwest. So when I wake up, my body wakes up. Why do I need to wake up? I'm in a different time zone. It doesn't matter. It will do what it does. So there are some things which happens at an unconscious, subconscious levels, at a physiological level. But when you understand them in a cognitive way, then maybe we actually appreciate it better, or we accept them a lot better. This kind of a way of differentiating, actually having the karmakanda and gnanakanda, this is something that is unique to our perspective, Hinduism, because many of them, like Bible, is a gnanakanda and karmakanda all together, but it is predominantly a karmakanda. Like that.
Two examples, interesting that you brought that up, that I personally very important for me. So one is, Swamiji used to tell me that when you learn to swim, supposing you want to learn to swim, the best thing is to get into the water and move your hands and feet just like the instructor is saying. You cannot learn to swim by lying on the bed. Okay? It's not possible. And suddenly go and say, by the way, you know, move your head like this and breathe. You can't do that. You have to actually do that. The second example, I remember I was working for HP, and we had a sales conference in Washington, D.C., and my roommate was a Westerner with a very good golf score. He was a scratch golfer. And I remember I was doing meditation in my room on one corner. You know what he was doing? He took out his golf club and he was swinging the golf club for about 10 minutes. Oh, the corner of my eye. I said, what the heck is he doing? And he was probably wondering, what am I doing there, doing meditation, you know, my eyes closed. So I asked him, I said, David, what are you doing? He said, this is the secret to playing good golf. You train your muscles and you train your mind that this is how you should swing it. And when I go to the actual golf course, it's a lot easier for me. So these two examples for me were very important.
No, what you're saying and what you said, Prasad, I totally agree with you. I understand. I'm just trying to see the challenges, since we have all gone through those, when you are 25 years old and you have a 10-year-old kid or 5-year-old kid, and you're trying to convince this is the way to do it, that no, this is not what they told me in school, I'm going to question.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do it.
And it
But
is
at the
okay to
same
question.
time, if I may just finish that thought, 15 years later, when they are in 20s and 25s and 30s, they come back and say, you know, what you said did make sense.
Exactly.
See,
Yeah. So that gives me faith.
I think I'm having similar challenge. I'm doing therapy classes for kids, part of yoga therapy. Same thing, like when the mother says that kid is not listening to anything, any ritual. Well, you can call it to substitute the ritual.
Yeah.
I know that it's right thing to do, and mother is also struggling to finding some tool to convey the kid, like, do this one.
Do something.
Okay, but it's a struggle, like you said, like,
It's a struggle, no doubt
it's
about
a
it.
struggle, but I'm trying to find how to reach him, okay, in a proper, it's a learning process for me too as well, okay? So, yeah, it makes sense, like now.
Very much.
Later, he may realize it's very important, that's him.
I think the struggle also lies, as you said, that some of us have not done it ourselves when we were 10-year-olds. So now as a parent and being in a new country, so I think it is not the child is
Much
getting
harder
the
in this.
convincing thing. We as parents have not done the swimming ourselves. I think we are not acknowledging that there is no authority, the child can see you don't know what you're doing. And we have not been honest with
I think
ourselves.
we have more of a challenge. If you are in India, you learn it by osmosis. You have to create that osmosis.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perfect way to say, if you role model, so assume that you are in the same state as your child, you learn with the child. When you practice it, when you do it 3 times a day, that person will think that it is fun to be an adult, to be like you, they will imitate it. So, that's where it begins, like Shraddhavan Lavate Gnanam.
Yeah.
When you keep practicing it, over a period of time, you gain the knowledge and perspective that goes with it.
I have 2 granddaughters, and it is really so much learning for me to see them grow up from day one. And exactly as Prasadji and you also both said, and as you said too. So when I do puja and I close my eyes and I do the namaskara, I see them just mimicking, just following the grandfather, and I don't tell them anything. I says, their mother says, well, go sit down with your granddad. I don't even tell them. I just do the puja that I want to do. And they feel, well, I guess he must know what he's doing, so I should do it too. So you're right, it's a challenge. It's not easy to do.
Yeah, I think the challenge at that time, going back 40 years, is trying to keep yourself together and have faith in what you are doing. Because if you lose that, that's where you get the child.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then I just want to add one point. Sometimes, results are not tangible. Results are not, kids can see. Like my son, somebody told him, if you do like, chanting in Navratri, whatever you, ask God, you will get that. So what he wanted, like his friend to, join him in the next year school also, because school, they assign the class like randomly, right? So he like, very devotion and everything. He did like, 9 days, one mala Gayatri chanting, Gayatri mantra chanting. And after that, when it did not happen, okay, then he said, okay, this is not working, right?
Yeah. So I think that's where, I think that's where your role as a parent also has to come in, where you have to say that it's not necessary.
Yeah.
That, you increase the probability. But that's all you do. But how you communicate, it's not easy to do. So all these are absolute challenges. Okay, so I'm going to move on because
I'm
we have
curious
lots
about the last line.
The
What
last
did you have?
one, there is a, hold on a second.
Shraddha, it should say. Shraddha. I should say
Shraddha.
Oh,
Shraddha.
Shraddha.
It's just,
Oh, just
a
a-
font
You
style.
can translate it in
Oh, then
PowerPoint.
that's
It's
fine.
a
I thought there was-
Sorry, I also didn't know.
No, that's fine. I know Shraddha.
Okay, so let's go on to the second part of what Swami, this is still covering the article for Swamiji. Okay, so this is the second part of that. Now it goes into, in fact, I think we are already covering some of the things that we were talking about. So in the sense that because it is, this, by the way, is, if you were to talk about, your question about the uniqueness of Hinduism, everybody says that and so on. If you want to really come down to the brass tacks, here is the uniqueness of Hinduism. Okay? And this also needs to be understood by us, not accepted, but understood by us. Here's what it is. Let me just say this and then we will go into that. There are two parts to a creation, any creation. One is the intelligence to do the creation. And the other one is the material for the creation. So this is what is called in Vedanta, nimitta karanam and upadana karanam.
Yeah.
Karana dvaya. This is the thing. Everybody knows this. To our knowledge, there is no school of thought other than Vedic school of thought that believes that God is both nimitta and upadana karana. And as a result of that, they have to scramble to explain a lot of issues. Like when did God create? Well, he created on such and such time. Where did he get the material from? Well, he's capable, he can just create it. In a way that is okay, but there is no clear explanation for that. What Hinduism believes is that Ishvara is both the creator and also the created. So the body of the whole Ishvara is the body of the world. There is no place where he's not, and it is not a question of belief. It's a question of Shraddha. The question of Shraddha until you get Jnana. Again, the same two-part cycle, two-part cycle to that. So this is exactly the same thing. If you do that, you have now a complete explanation for all aspects of Hinduism. Take, for example, the doing puja to a vigraha. Okay? Now, why should we not do it? Why should we say that that we cannot do Ganesha, we cannot do Saraswati, or we cannot do a snake for that matter? Why? Because the Ishvara is everywhere, and I need to start somewhere. I just need to have some kind of a discipline. Now, all of us believe that really the piece of stone is not is Ganesha, but really speaking, it is. The other thing is, for example, when you salute the flag of a nation, you're not saluting the flag. We fold it on. You salute the very idea of the nation. Right. So therefore, really speaking, it doesn't matter, as Prasadji was saying earlier, that you have such universal form of thing that Hinduism smiles at you and says, do it. Whatever. In a village, if there is a threatening of one particular aspect of it, make them into your friend. Like I was talking about the real story about the snake in our ashram. And really speaking, what was taught to this guy who killed the snake is, do you know we've been living here for the last 20 years and they have not bitten a single person. They are go in and out all the time. And this is Ishvara's creation. Finally, the fellow understood it, but we have to do a remedial puja because of that. So our ritualistic prayers to anything is accepted. This is what, and the uniqueness of this, if you want to really note it down and understand it, is abhinna nimitta upadana karana. For everyone. So nimitta karana means the intelligence of creation.
Right.
And by the way, the intelligence of creation, everybody feels the same way. They feel that the Ishvara, God, Allah, whatever it is, they are all knowing, all power, they know that. We also agree with that. issue comes in, where did they find the material? Because then they go into a location for Ishvara, someplace else. This is not. This is
not part of
this is
the
not
Ishvara.
part of that. Funny things happen. So this is the really, if you want to talk about the one thing that characterizes Hinduism, it is the fact that it's abhinna. Abhinna means non-separate. And by the way, two very beautiful examples are given. I'm already stealing it from the rest of the thing and so on. Two very beautiful examples.
But one thing which we may need to add, Vijayji, is that when Christianity, or when some of them, when they talk about demon, when they talk about Lucifer, when they talk about some of the negative energies, they don't know how to do it. It comes down to there is God and there is devil. But in our context, the devil and the God all come from the same context, same karana, same thing that comes. So that means the idea of the omnipotent, omniscient, and all of this becomes meaningful only in the Hindu context. It doesn't become meaningful in the Christian or a what you call Islamic context, because there is a separation between who is God and who is not God. There is a tree of knowledge. That means once you know, you separate out from that. But that separation of God's anger, God's wrath, all of that is not necessarily same in the Hinduism, because for us, God created that. Some of you who might be even familiar with something like Sahasraksha, Sahasrapat, Sabhumir, Viswato, Rutva, Atyadistat, Dashangulam. Anybody know what this is? Have you heard of Purusha Suktam? What is that? Purusha, the intelligence, has created three parts of him one way, one part of him one way. He created the hell, heaven. The idea of how the intelligence has manifested itself out of itself. So there is non-differentiation. By the way, this doesn't mean we are addressing Dvaita, Advaita. It is not that. This is about recognizing there is a certain way when we talk about God, when we talk about Ishvara, we really take advantage of what Ishvara means in its fullest sense, rather than separating out the good part and the bad part. This is one big differentiation between Hindu religion and other religions.
Sounds very much similar to what Professor Punit Singh was saying.
Correct.
Last lecture, transcendent.
Yes.
Transcendence.
Yeah.
Versus
transformation.
Two separate.
Correct. Correct.
So
one
transforms into another,
right,
and you transcend to the next level.
Right.
We are doing a little bit out of sequence, which is fine with me. I think as long as we have a meaningful discussion on the issue of Hinduism view of God. I was going to do this later. Let's do it now. So this concept of having God, as Prasadji also mentioned, that God being both benevolent as well as somebody who punishes, is something very difficult to understand for people. How can a God be both benevolent and be punishing for people? So our view is this, okay? Our view is that the creation, or in Vedantic sense, in non-creation, because a creation is only at the transactional level. So when you have various waves of the ocean, yes, there are waves, but really there are no real waves, it's only water. So that's a separate thing that we will look at it hopefully later on. But in our view, in this creation, the primary objective is for each individual to reach the goal of life, which is pure Ananda. And in doing so, we make mistakes. We do the wrong actions. We cheat, we lie, we kill. which is not the right method to achieve Ananda. So now, here is the reason I'm bringing this up is to understand the nature of Ishvara and to look at the dichotomy between Hinduism and many of the others, I haven't studied everybody, but many of the others who feel that God should be purely benevolent. And as Prasadji said, let's postulate a separate devil to take care of it. We don't believe that. Why not? Because if you are a specialist surgeon and you are brought a patient who's very sick, very ill, it is possible you may have to injure the patient to correct his illness. So the dukkha is necessary for us. And in fact, at the last part of it is that if you are so violent, you may have to be given an anesthetic to calm you down for 100 or 200 years. In fact, we feel that many of the flora and fauna are exactly like that. So there is an order in this. So therefore, what I'm saying is that postulation of both goodness and badness to the Ishvara is from the standpoint that he or she thinks that you need to be well in your life. And so some punishment is necessary for you to achieve the final goal, which is Ananda. So this is a very part of the very good.
So this is again my basic understanding of the birth and about Ishvara and other things. So is it correct that God gives us, makes us alive, He creates us, at the same time He gives the freedom of choice? That is the reason He has an option to make you as no evil at all. He is so powerful, He can create that. But still, we tend to do a lot of wrong things because we have a freedom of choice. That's what God don't control and give and all that. Is that my understanding is correct? That is what?
It is somewhat correct. But from that standpoint, what is said is that suppose you have, in fact, my teacher gave this example to answer your question, okay? Let me just spend a couple of minutes. So there was a Hollywood producer. And the Hollywood producer said, these typical Hollywood movies where there is a villain who abducts the heroine and creates a lot of fight. I don't like that. I want my movies to be very pleasant. They created a movie. There is a couple, most good-looking couple in the world. Not only good-looking, but they are the best behaving people. And by the way, they are very rich. And everybody loves them. And their neighbor next door is actually like that. They have a daughter and you have a son. They got married. And then their children were born who were so beautiful. No diseases or anything like this. Everybody adored them. And the movie ends. So he shows it to his wife and says, honey, don't you like this? She says, don't do this movie. Nobody will see this movie. It's all goodness and there is not a single any problems of any kind. What kind of a creation is that? So the God's creation is really
Drama.
an interesting drama with multiple acts. This is going to go on for several lives. And it is all scientific. It's all scientific in the sense that your karmas from your previous life, you cannot be forgiven because you have created a problem. You need to be given some dosage of things that's to do. It's all completely structured very well in that sense. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I just wanted to.
I had one different question. If it is not related, you can answer.
Okay, sure.
Later also. So the question is first time. Let's say this is my first birth. My Atma has not done anything
There's
wrong.
no first birth. It's another. There's no such birth.
No, let's say something. There must be something.
No,
first,
there's
right?
no such thing as
something
a first birth. It is always there. You've always been there.
Okay, let's say my Atma is free from all the karma, no karma attached, then what type of body I get, like the first time, right?
So they say the explanation for this in the Hinduism is anadi. Anadi means that the entire creation has always been there, independent of time. There was no such thing as a first thing. So Maya is anadi, all creation is anadi, jivas are anadi. Just between you and I, you are, I would say, 2 trillion years old. You had many wives, many children in the past, many parents, many friends, and you are going to continue to do that, for a while until you reach the complete.
Yeah, I mean,
Pretty good looking for that kind of thing.
And by the way, that may be very interesting to connect with even in science. They're finding when you look at the Big Bang, or when you talk about some other things like how Ebola comes in, other things come in, that means we are breathing each other's air. And this air and this atmosphere, everything that is there has been there for a long time. So we might be breathing the same air as Jesus Christ or Krishna Bhagavan or Ram or Allah or any of them. So the idea scientifically, or they are saying also, is that the cells keep dying every 7 years, but we are the same. That means, so as you probably know, like my son, when he was born, he had milk allergy. After some time, he got out of the milk allergy. What does that mean? When he got out of a certain stage, that was gone. Similarly, I just heard yesterday, it was a person who had schizophrenia, major problem, got leukemia, blood cancer. They did the latest, this I heard from the physician who is working on that research. He was telling me that they did some experimental immunotherapy with this person. When they did the entire blood to be removed and changed and the immune system has been altered, what is amazing is this person's schizophrenia is completely gone. They are saying, just like you have the neural cells, there is a blood-brain barrier. There are certain medical things. But when they were able to penetrate and do certain things, they are finding what they considered as a schizophrenia is no longer there. What is the point I'm making out of all this? The idea of we are here, I'm born, I'm doing this, this is a very powerful identity-based illusion that we have. And it is necessary illusion, because otherwise we'll break all the barriers, we'll take somebody else that, and we'll violate all kinds of things. It is a necessary thing. But at the same time, the moment we have this deha bhava, I am this body, or I am this identity, I am these gunas, this is what gives us a certain temporary permanence. And that temporary permanence is the one that separates us from rest of the universe and rest of the God. So that's why when we go into, Vijayji will go into, who am I, who is God, what is the universe, what is the relationship with each other. If we go a few more slides, you'll get into and recognize that this is not just a Hindu concept. This Hindu concept has been proven through, whether you talk about the astronomy and looking at the Big Bang, only thing we are saying is, just like they say 15 billion years for the Big Bang, we are saying there are multiple Big Bangs. It is not like there was only one Big Bang. There are multiple Big Bangs. At the end of each yuga, or at Mahayuga.
So that really is the point. The first one is
exactly
that you know this very well. I don't have to tell you this, that the very basic tenets of Hinduism is that we don't think that there is a real creation.
No starting point.
No starting point. That's your point. Okay. It is a manifestation and non-manifestation. Sorry, your point. Manifestation and manifestation. And you need more time. We can discuss why and how and so on and so forth. But I'm just giving you in the short time the basic tenets, and then we can do that. Okay.
So in the same context, maybe you can cover it later. You mentioned that Ishvara is creator and created, right?
Correct.
So I didn't still understand where this created part comes.
Okay, all right.
Maybe you can
Okay, so
provide
let's,
that.
yeah, that's a good point. I was going to give you an example. The best example of that is the dream of the human being, where you are the dreamer and you are the dreamt. You are both of them. You as the conscious entity, the conscious being. So this is at the human level, at the, not even the human level. I assume that even ants dream. I have no idea. Nobody has looked into that. But all beings have a ability to be a creator and the created. So similarly, in this manner, you have both the abhinna, nimitta, and upadana karanatva from this side. A couple of other things I want to quickly go over, and then we'll go into the real the tenets and so on. As part of the Hindu ethos, there is a concept of dharma and swadharma. So, from the standpoint of dharma, we are not that different from others. And I'm not saying this just because of trying to say we are superior or not. I'm just trying to have an understanding in our study also, because I went to an ashram for 2.5 years to study this. Swamiji used to say, please do not look upon Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and so on as something which is inferior to you. Not at all. But understand Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and Christianity, and Islam, and so on, in order to understand your own thoughts a little bit better. What are some of the problems of their thinking? How can you reply them? So it is not to criticize anyone else, but to deepen the understanding of your own belief. So in that standpoint, the dharmas are pretty common. What is really interesting about Hinduism is swadharma. This is a very important thing that we will build upon it maybe in some other. What swadharma means is, and this is also, by the way, because of your past karmas and so on and so forth, you have been given certain roles in this life based on your ability, your position in this life, whether you're going to be a scientist or you're going to be a leader. And this is what is the 4 caste systems have degenerated into. But so dharma means your natural ability to do things which are peculiar to your personality. If you do that, then you know that this was gifted to you. It was given to you through your parents, through the society, and if you want to extend it further, by Ishvara. And any problems, and don't leave that. Don't leave your swadharma and say, I don't like my position. I want to go to completely different. Don't do that, because you'll be wasting time. You try to do the best you can under the role that you have been given to you right now. This is what will lead to a peaceful life for you. It's not as though you must do this for the sake of others. That's not the idea. The idea is to flit from one role to the other is not part of the swadharma. You take your time, like for example, I know that in India, or even much more here than in India, I know my older son was very interested in becoming a lawyer. And he went to high school and said, well, I want to be a lawyer. Then he took a summer job. And he with a law firm in Palo Alto. And he says, what goes on behind the scenes sickens me. I don't want to be a lawyer. They are liars and cheaters, and there's no ethicalness. I don't want to do that. I just want to, and he went into science and engineering. And so it's not as though you cannot change, but once you find a position which is suitable to you, stay with it. This is what is called the concept of swadharma. which is endemic in the Hindu thinking. Anyway, I want to now wrap up my interpretation of what Swamiji had written. You can probably read some of this in more detail.
So dharma is do your best, right?
Do your best, exactly right. And this is really just another form of karma yoga in Bhagavad Gita. Absolutely.
Kind of cyclic argument, I guess, you have developed into something that over, by trial and error, going through school, picking courses, I like this, I like that, or don't like that.
Yeah.
So you have, this is a product at the end of 20 years or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you are, and you're saying, basically stick with it. That's what you have defined for yourself on your own to be and be the best you can.
Yes, in a way you can say that, but we need more time for discussion.
Can I add one thing around that before, because you will get it in a beautiful way. I just wanted to give a practical thing. This is an extremely important. As a counselor, when you go in, these are some questions which you'll have to answer.
Right.
The differentiation, I think as Vijayji said, Swadharma is a concept that is unique to Hinduism, not even according to other dharmic religions, Jainism, Buddhism, some of them. Why is that? Swabhava and Swadharma are different. What you are saying, I feel like it, I want to go do this, this is how I feel like, this is where it comes. That comes from gunas. That comes from certain ways of, how the universe operates. But Swadharma is recognizing, for me, as you were saying, for his son to say, this is not aligned with my inner dharma. For me, I know this is not. That doesn't necessarily mean, law is bad or something like that. But for me, this does not resonate as the right path for me to take to get to where I want to go and to gain the freedom that I want to get. Because we want to choose a career that gives us happiness and that gives us freedom. So you need to recognize sometimes the lethargy. Oh, I have been in this job for 7 years. I got a good job, good salary. When you are a counselor, what you might want to say is, yeah, you are there. It meets your basic needs. But do you wake up in the morning to go to work? Are you excited about what you are doing? If you are not, there is a mismatch between your Swadharma and Swabhava. Your conditioning might keep you in something, but you need to follow your path. Of course, when we talk about Bhagavad Gita and all of them will go, but this is a beautiful thing. Please go ahead from there.
I think it's my ignorance, trying to understand. You mentioned about Swadharma and Swabhava.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, if my understanding is correct, the Swabhava happens, somebody has to make you to put in, born in some parents who have already some gunas and vasanas and practices, right? So the karma determines where I was supposed to born, right?
You're going into deeper stuff, but yeah, please, please.
No, I'm just trying to connect these dots. But your Swabhava and Swadharma is already decided by your karma, but it gives an opportunity to change it in this birth, correct? So how?
Let me give you. I think
I'm just
what I'd like to do is keep it as a concept for us to develop, and we will look at it.
Yeah.
But let me give you one example, which we are all familiar with. The arranged marriage system in India.
Can you speak a little louder?
The arranged marriage system in India is the classical example of Swadharma. Classical. And what that means is that, I don't know about you, but the way this is done, that it was done in my case, I also got an arranged marriage, that our parents, the girl's parents and my parents, did the best possible job that they could think of. Who should we marry this person to? The compatibility of this, that, or the other. Not perfect. I can tell you that from my marriage. It's not that perfect. No, I'm just kidding.
You're being recorded.
But what they do is they do the best possible job, and then you get married. Now, for you to say, my God, this is a huge mistake, which can happen. Which can happen. And I want to divorce this person and go to the next one. The Hindu Swadharma says, don't. Stay with the person and improve yourself. If you had a difficult, if supposing you had a difficult spouse given to you, that is a signal by Ishvara that you need a lot of discipline, perhaps even dukkha. Stay with it. Don't move around and just be like Elizabeth Taylor with 11 marriages, you know, that I want somebody better. That's not what it is. So the Hindu marriage is a very classical and a very beautiful example of Swadharma. This is all that is being said about it. So Gaurav, should we take a 5-minute break at this point, you think? Huh? Why don't we do that? 5 or 10 or however, tell me.
I think
Yeah,
10
the
minutes.
only thing I would say is you still have to do your slides.
Which is another, we can shorten it because we've already discussed many of the points.
So do you want to do that, then take a break? Because then after that, you're going to get Prasad to come up, right? And group discussion with Prasad. That would be a more logical break.
You think so?
Okay. Up to you. No.
Break is always good.
If we can take a
Remember,
quick
we have
break,
to live through it.
Yeah.
why don't we do a quick break? Huh?
Bio break.
Bio break,
10 minutes.
and then 10 minutes max, and then we will continue. Sorry, I know I was thinking of that, but
This is
I think we've had a lot of.
Just to wait, I think Gaurav was trying to say that somebody might be catching.
It is coming up.
Yeah,
You can just see them, but they're all logged in.
Okay, it's fine, that's fine.
Shall we start?
One more person, so I think he went to see
Okay.
Gaurav.
So yeah, I think that we have.
about 4 or 5 people who are catching. They're all coming.
Okay, I'll just wait. Your second break will be a lot shorter.
Actually, we may not have one. We have no plans for second break.
No.
Then, because we don't have.
We have bad news for you. There's no second break.
Generally, we have been.
Karma, you invited that karma.
On time.
I'm more interested to know a little bit about this classes here.
Yes.
Not exactly comparisons.
Yes, yes. So you can give me your Okay, let's get started.
Yeah.
Camera is on, everything all okay, recorded? Okay. So, what we're going to do, I think, not necessarily for a full hour, I think it'll be a lot shorter than that, because we've been covering many of the points, and I don't want to really belabor them in that sense. We're going to cover some of the elements of what Hinduism is. What are the basic elements of Hinduism? And this is something that I had done over the last two months, and I've been commiserating with Prasad ji and also with Swamini ji. I've sent her some of my material, and we have made some corrections and so on. So this is the result of the work on 6 or 7 areas of what Hinduism is. And I'm not going to go through them in great detail because you have much of that. So you know already that the word Hindu is not really a generic term. It means Vedic knowledge. The Hindu term is an outside imposition. We all know that. The Iranians gave it to us because we were near the river Indus. So Hinduism means Vaidika. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, previous one?
Yeah.
This one. Yep. Yeah. So no, I was actually talking about something which was not even on the slide, which is what is the Hindu. So yeah. So anyway, I'm not going to go through that. You all pretty much know that. So now I want to give you a very brief idea of the scriptural authority of the Hindus. What is it really? Where does it come from? Okay. So if you look at the notes that I have prepared, first of all, we've already gone through that this is a way of life. There's a vision, there's a way of life, very comprehensive, very fluid in the sense of applying to a variety of different situations in life. It's not, as Prasadji said, one size fits all. You have to have shoes for the kids, you have to have shoes for the adults, shoes for soldiers, shoes for ballet dancers, different kinds of situations. That's all covered in the Vedic literature. This is what comprises Hinduism. It's not just a single source per se. Also, as these notes point out, I'll come to that, our authority of the Vedas are so comprehensive that they include all walks of life, all stages of life. So all the way from practical work, from spirituality, health, and so on and so forth. So basically, we have 6 levels of literature available in the Vedic thought. So those are the 4 Vedas that comprise the Shruti, the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, and Yajur Veda. And by the way, you should know this, that the Vedas are timeless. Timeless in the sense they are always there. They're always there throughout. So this is something that I cannot defend in this short time. But people say Rig Veda is 25 years, 2,500 years old. It is timeless. It has always been there. And my teacher had given this beautiful explanation, which I really understood for the first time. He said, you know, just like you have electromagnetic waves in the air, right now there are 500 TV channels being right here. Radio channels, FM, AM, all over the place. They are always present. Now, what you can do is to tune your mechanism to any one of the channels. If you are capable, you have to do a lot of mechanics into a radio or a television station. If you do that, you capture a teeny portion of it, and then you express it. The Veda is exactly like that. The Veda was always there, but what has happened in the last, possibly in the last few thousand years, I have no idea. There were people with such fine minds. These are called rishis, who were like instruments, who were tuned into the very basic principles that expressed it. And in our situation, this was done the most well job of that by Vyasa, Veda Vyasa. He was the one who really categorized. So Veda Vyasa is not the writer of Vedas. He's simply an editor. He's simply done some, and he said, I think we should have 4 of them so that families can follow them. Anyway, this is what is called Shruti. And the basic wisdom of the Vedic wisdom comes from these 4 Vedas. It's called Shruti. What is heard? The next level is Smriti. Oh, by the way, Vedas, as I mentioned earlier, is considered to be apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means not Purushajanya. It is there from the very beginning. In fact, the word of Ishvara, we feel. And so now the Smriti onwards, the next 5 levels of literature are Paurusha. They are actually done by human beings. The most important Smriti is Bhagavad Gita. And it is so well done that it is often called the fifth Veda. The fifth Veda. It's so well considered. In our study also, we spent a lot of time understanding. And the reason for that is very interesting. The Bhagavad Gita is meant for the householder, for the active person. 99% of the people are not swamis. Because the swamis can study the Shrutis if they want to. But the Bhagavad Gita epitomizes the basic teachings of the Shruti so well. And it is taught to an active warrior, Arjuna, who's facing the same problems that you and I do. We have a lot of issues, a lot of conflicts, disappointments, and so on and so forth. So the way this was done for the active householder is what really characterizes the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. Yes.
So you mentioned Bhagavad Gita is Shruti, right?
No, it's Smriti.
Smriti, sorry.
It's a Smriti.
Okay.
Smriti, that's which is remembered.
Yeah. But again, it is not from Ishvara, but
It is from a person.
Person.
Yes.
So, but it's delivered by Krishna, correct?
Yes.
So Krishna is considered as a
Avatar,
but still considered a
Human being.
Human being, correct?
human being, yes. Yes.
I just want to clarify.
Yes, absolutely. And what is really very characteristic of Bhagavad Gita is that it is in first person.
Yeah.
It's not in third person, but it is in first person. And that makes difference because for those of us who are really committed students of Vedanta, we look upon that as Ishvara talking.
He was just writing down each of the slides. I said all of these are on the website.
Yeah.
You can download all of them.
Okay, so that's the second level of the. Sorry, you had a question?
Just what you said, I guess, Shruti is kind of timeless. We don't know when it began.
Yes.
So I guess the way I connect.
No, I've changed that.
Okay.
Not that we don't know when it began, we know that it never began. There's a difference.
So that goes with the same assertion, hey, Hinduism or life is anadi itself.
Yes, very much so. Yes, it goes along with the same.
Goes along with that.
Along with the same
And
package.
come around 2500 or whenever.
It was
that's when
revealed. It was revealed.
It was basically classified or,
It was revealed to the rishis,
rishis.
who were capable of understanding
All this collective
exactly.
knowledge to the time immemorial, wherever.
Then the third level, and by the way, these other levels of the literature are meant for easier understanding. So the more you progress, the down you go, the easier it gets to understand. Because the whole thing is about understanding. They're all going from Shraddha to Jnana. Okay? So the next level is Puranas. So there are 18 Puranas. And the Puranas convey the same Tatparya. Tatparya means Tasya Param Shuddham Tatparya means the essence of the Vedas is called Tatparya. The Puranas convey the same Tatparya in a story form. It is not just, in fact, I would not even say that this is easier as it goes down because let me interrupt myself. If you go to number 5, which is called Sutras, Brahma Sutras, not easier to understand, but it's a separate literature. What Brahma Sutras are, I don't know how many of you are hardware designers in this room?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what a machine language is. You know what a user language is. You know that much. Brahma Sutra is the machine language of Vedas. To give you an idea, there are 555 sutras in Brahma Sutra. The word Brahman appears only once. That's the noun. Everything else is a pronoun. There's no reason to repeat. There is not a single thing that is repeated. It's all pure knowledge. And so this is called Brahma Sutra. Also written by Vyasa. And it is like a Supreme Court justice writing the final form of what is there. I'll give you one example. So the word Antaryami, which I think I'm going to come to that in a little while. Antaryami means someone inside of you, something, not someone, something inside of you that regulates how you behave in life. You know, something about your personality. It says, you know, I think I want to do this. Or I want to go to this class. Or I want to go to a movie. There's someone that sort of impels you to do things. This is what is called an antaryami. So now, in Brahma Sutra, there is a section called Antaryami section. And in the Supreme Court, there are two lawyers given opposite views. I think we should have abortion. I think we should abolish abortion. Two viewpoints. And I don't know what's going to happen now with Kavanaugh and part of the Supreme Court. That's a separate thing. But the Supreme Court, if they are equal to everybody and so on, they're not politically biased, are supposed to consider everything and give a verdict. Brahma Sutra does this. So the two lawyers are as follows in case of the Antaryamitva. One is the Jiva is the Antaryami. Each one of you, you know best what is good for you. You know your history, your aspirations, your disappointments, your fears, your desires. You take the step based on what's good for you. So the lawyer rises up and says, Jiva is the Antaryami. The other lawyer says, nope, not true. It is Ishvara who is the Antaryami, not the Jiva. And so the justices asked him, why do you think it should be Ishvara who's the Antaryami? Because you do things without wanting to do things. You take wrong actions without wanting to do so. The mind is not under your control. If you had full knowledge of what you want to do, you'll never commit a bad action. But you do. You know that rasagullas are bad, you have diabetes. And anytime there are few free rasagullas, if you have to pay for it, then you say, okay, you know. But suppose you go to a party and you have samosas and rasagullas and it's free. You say, oh, I have diabetes, it's chalta rehta hai, koi baat nahi. Let me just have a couple of minutes. This is not,
Guilty as
not
charged. Guilty as charged.
Oh, no, me too. So, so the second lawyer argues that Ishvara is the Antaryami. And Vyasa.
And what's the definition of the Antaryami again?
Why don't you hold that question?
Maybe you should just show that.
So, Antaryami means Ante Tishtan Yamayati iti Antaryami. That is the definition. Staying inside, it regulates your behavior, is called Antaryami. Okay. We'll go into that perhaps, hopefully, in time. Anyway, to complete the story, the second lawyer says Ishvara is the Antaryami. Now both the lawyers are waiting to see which one is the correct. Vyasa says Ishvara wins out. How that happens, we'll have to see later. But I'm just giving you. So this is the essence of the Brahma Sutras in the literature. And it's the most difficult literature to study. You cannot study this unless you've done quite a bit of Shrutis, quite a bit of Smritis, at least one or two Puranas, which we did in our study. And out of the 555 sutras, our Swamiji taught us only 4, Chatushutri. And that took about 6 months. And the rest of them I've been studying on my own. I try to do it at breakfast. I think I'm up to about 250 or something like that.
And one thing, JG, if I might interrupt. Some of these, why are we saying this? Why are these important to you as counselors? It is important because even though we have adopted Bhagavad Gita as the predominant way to look at it, Bhagavad Gita draws from many of these kinds of things, and there are some things called Prasthanatrayam. Upanishads, 10 Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutras are considered to be very, very important for learning for all Hindus. So these are some questions that might come up from other religions. If you are on a panel, if you are talking to somebody, what are important books that are there? And I think Vijayji is emphasizing, saying that just like many other texts which other religions use, you cannot just say, if I master this, I got it and I need to keep reading it. So some of the things like Brahma Sutras take a lifelong practice of trying to absorb and do it, because one will give you practical ways of doing it. Second one will give you different stories and metaphors and methodologies by which you understand what has been told, but the abstract and the deeper connection to the universe has to come. So Bhagavad Gita is the practical, simplest way to talk about. Upanishads are the next level of elaborating it. Brahma Sutras have got a certain substantive material that is translated in, is the essence of Upanishads and Gita in different ways. So as counselors, you may not have to understand, we may not have to go into any of them, but it is necessary for you to know what are the bases and what are the ways in which it is drawn. From that perspective, you need to know this.
Also, just want to add to these comments. Even though what Prasadji just said is correct, even then, please understand that these 6 levels of literature that we are talking about point to a very consistent vision of what the Vedas are saying. There may be stories, there may be Brahma Sutras, there may be Bhagavad Gita or anything. There's different ways of expressing the same truth, which is what is the vision and how do you get there. Sadhya and sadhana are the 2 means that we should understand. Sadhya means the vision, that we are totally free, don't realize it. And sadhana means how do I understand it. These 2 are the Tatparya Nishchaya for all of the layers of literature that we are talking. Okay? So, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
I was going to say, you said there's like 6, we have the Vedas and the
Upanishads
and Puranas.
So right now, this is given in that handout that you have. So you have the 4 Vedas, Shruti. Second one is Smriti. Third one is Puranas.
Right.
Fourth one is Itihasa. So Itihasa, of course, are the Ramayana and the Gita and the Mahabharata. There also, the purpose is the sadhya and sadhana. Purpose is that you may have stories about Rama doing this and Krishna doing this and so on and so forth. It is also a way for the initial introduction to Hinduism, but the purpose is the same. That is the Itihasa. Then we have a sutra literature, and finally, we have a numerous number of bhashyas, commentaries, independent works. Amazing. Drik Drishya Viveka, Panchadashi, Tattva Bodha, Atma Bodha, Shankara's work, others' work, all kinds of things. And they're continuing. The study that I'm doing with, and I'm taking a class on Tuesday night in this very place, is the first chapter of Panchadashi. Panchadashi is a beautiful text, which is only written in year, I think about 700-800 years ago. It's very recent. but it's an excellent text that reiterates all the aspects of it. And so that's all be given here. This comprises the scriptural authority of Hinduism. Very comprehensive, somewhat diverse, but very comprehensive and very complete. So with that, let us launch into the three basic elements of the Hindu tenets. This is the core of what we are. Oh, sorry, I want to talk one other thing. Variations of the Hindu thought. That's the next section that we have. Okay. Well, slide up. Yes, I do. So just a few minutes of that. Yes.
One quick question. So, what does one miss if one is, say, totally focused on Bhagavad Gita and one understands it fully, but does not do Veda, does not do Upanishad, does not do Purana? So what do you really?
So what you will need is, if you don't understand everything that the Gita is saying. So you have to see for yourself, because you see what will happen is, in your journey towards understanding, sometimes you will say, this I don't understand, and I will read it some other time. This I grasp right away. So that dichotomy you will see in the Bhagavad Gita. What is not understood by the reading of the Bhagavad Gita is explained further in other texts. That's how it will be.
And also, maybe to add to what Vijayji is saying, let us say you are a physician. You have become a family physician. You work on basic type of stuff which is there, internist. But if there are some things which are deeper than that, you go to psychiatry, you go to cardiology, you go to neurology,
for example.
Same way. But for Bhagavad Gita is for a day-to-day, for counselors, it's an extraordinarily meaningful, useful thing. That's why we are recommending it, because that brings from various Vedas, Upanishads, all of them, the essence of it is already there. But if you need to double click, if I use a computer language, and go deeper into what does this mean, karmanyevadikaraste mapaleshikadachana, or dukkeshonudvikramanaha, somewhere else, something else you need to do, be able to be familiar with what is the hierarchy of knowledge, what are the different ways, what are the different things where you can dig deeper into understanding where did it come from, why is it important, how do I address it. For those kinds of things, as counselors, it is important for you to know what are all various things, and also to be able to dig into some of them for your own learning. It may not be necessary as a counselor for you to refer to some of these, but if you don't dig into this ocean of wisdom, then your knowledge becomes like materia medica. I will refer everything that is part of this particular one. So for your knowledge, it may be necessary also to take it forward.
So I want to go into a little bit about the diversity of thoughts, schools of thought within what is called Hinduism. So here, there is a basic definition of what is called Astika and Nastika. When I was growing up, I didn't understand this very well. I thought Astika means those who believe in God, and Nastika means who don't believe. That's not reason, correct? Astika means those who swear by the Vedic knowledge, and Nastikas are the ones who say, that's not, I don't believe, why should I believe in Vedas? That's just one of the books, there are lots of other ones and so on. That's the basic element between Astika and Nastika. The reason we say that what's that, 6 schools, Darshana, sorry, it's called Darshana. The word Darshana is used. Darshana means a sort of viewpoint. There are 6 Darshanas amongst the Astikas. And by the way, not all of them have a vision of Ishvara. Some of them, Sankhya in particular, They don't think Ishvara is necessary. What's the name of this guy, the scientist who died? You know the
Kapila?
one? Huh?
Kapila?
No, Stephen Hawking.
Oh, Stephen Hawking, yeah.
Stephen Hawking.
Physics, yeah.
So, you know, his statement was, I can explain everything. You don't need God for doing that.
Right.
So the Sankhyas are like that, by the way. The Sankhya says we have a theory that completely explains everything that goes on. You don't need Ishvara for that. So there's a variation but they believe in the Vedas. The reason they believe in the Vedas is, and here's what happens. They take passages of Vedas selectively. They take some passages and they say, see, it says it right here. But the context is, you have to take it, this is what they call Mimamsa. So the word Mimamsa is used. Mimamsa means a logical understanding of what the Vedas are saying.
Specifically for Vedas? Mimamsa?
No, Mimamsa is, I think it used, it means logical analysis. It's called Mimamsa. But for us, the relevant part is
For relating to
Hindus.
Vedas.
Exactly, right.
So the other meaning of Mimamsa is like now you are lost in the thought, right?
That meaning I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
It's possible there may be a meaning, but I'm not familiar with that. I'm so conditioned by this meaning of that. So there are 6 schools of thought. And those are, they're divided into 3 subfamilies. Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa are the Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda of Veda. So the Uttara Mimamsa is Vedanta, as we said earlier. And Purva Mimamsa are the Karma Kandas. By the way, there was a question for someone, and I'll clarify that. Sometimes a 3rd segment of Vedas is used called Upasana Kanda. Upasana Kanda. So there 3 segments are used, Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, and Jnana Kanda. Upasana Kanda in many ways is grouped under Karma Kanda. It means mental karma, not physical karma. Prayers are also a karma. And so Upasana means a sort of like prayers as part of that. So that distinction sometimes happens between them. Anyway, going back to the 6 darshanas, they are subdivided into 3 segments. One is Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa are friends. They have some differences in emphasis, but they feel exactly alike for most cases. Next one is Sankhya and Yoga. And Sankhya and Yoga differ. This is what we call Nirishwara Sankhya and Seshwara Sankhya. Nirishwara Sankhya means without Ishvara. And Yoga is with Ishvara. So otherwise they are very closely related, they are cousins, but they have a basic difference. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and so on, they also postulate the presence of Ishvara. And Sankhyas don't. For them, a pradhana is the most important one. A pradhana is the most important one. And we won't go into the details of that. Finally, you have the 3rd subsegment, which is Nyayayikas and Vaisheshikas, Nyaya or Vishesha. Here, please understand, this thinking of Nyaya, which is logic, and Vishesha is very similar to the modern science. Modern science. They say everything has to be seen, otherwise if I don't see it, I cannot reproduce it. This is not their truth. And so the modern science may have some differences. You may have some new particles that have developed and so on and so forth. But the basic logic and the way it is developed is very similar. They are the grandfathers of the modern logic. That we also have to study why it is not true, and why this does not work completely. But anyway, those are the variations of the thoughts between Astikas. Then comes the Nastikas. And the most famous Nastikas are called Buddhism and Jainism. And then, of course, all of the other ones, much more recent. Buddhism and Jainism have been there for a long time. And then really speaking from that perspective, all the Judeo-Christian religious thoughts are all classified as Nastikas. They don't believe in the Vedas. Now, in case of Buddhism and Jainism, they believe in parts of the Vedas, not entirely. I'll give you one example. So in Jainism, what is said is that in going back to Hinduism, there is one conscious entity in the whole creation, which is called I. The Atma is one. And the expressions of the Atma are many. So, Ishvara, which is called Paramatma, is one. But the Jiva-Atma is simply an aspect of that. The example given is, there is only one ocean. Supposing there is only one ocean. You can have waves that are different from each other, but they all belong to the same water. This is our view in Vedanta, in Vedas. Jains don't believe that. They think they are separate Atmas. Everybody has a elephant has a big Atma, ant has a very small Atma. Because they believe, how can there be differences then? If there's only one Atma, how can you have different differences? We explain it in different ways, but they don't believe in that. So there are differences in the way they look at things. All I wanted to point out is that even in the Vedic thinking, there is actually quite a bit of variation. And also the non-Vedic aspects of that are also prevalent.
So it is like, there is a size of Atma too in Jainism. That's what you are telling.
Yes, yes.
So where would you put Charvak in Nastikas?
So Charvakas will be also really Nastikas.
Nastikas. But they are recognized.
They are recognized. Yes, yes. I'm just giving some popular examples of that. So Charvakas means, you know what the etymology of Charvaka is? Charu Vakyasya. So their thinking is, have fun in life. Who knows if you're going to have a next life or not? Maximize. If you want to steal, steal. Just have fun. This is what is called pleasant. Drink as much as possible. Okay. Hindu view of God. Thank you. So that's the next slide. There is neither one or many gods. There is only God. This is the meaning of the Hindu thinking. Why? Because the whole body is that of God. The whole creation is that of God. There is only one person. Only one person. And we are simply copies of that person. Anyway, that's the basic simply thinking of. So when, for example, when you are asked this question in many, especially if you're working with non-Hindus, why do you have so many gods? We only have one God. Then we say to them, this is like asking, what color of the car do you want to buy? We want to ask whether you want to buy a car at all or not. You don't need to buy a car, because really all creation is nothing but God. Just like in the US, there's a single government. You may have a county government, you may have police, you may have a post office, you may have a lot of different things. There's only one US government. So this is our view of the God, and I've given you some details of it. I want to move a little quickly on that. The second one we have already talked about. This is what I was talking about earlier. That our view is that the so-called Dukkhakara, the one who gives you problems, the one who gives you heart attacks, is a necessary part for you to get well. It has to be done, unfortunately. I remember my younger son, he had some surgeries that was necessary. several surgeries. When he was very young, he wouldn't mind getting, because he didn't know what was happening. They will give him a anesthetic before he realized it. And he started to grow up. So he'd say, "Where are you taking me?" So we said, "Sorry, we have to take you to the hospital." "To do what?" "You know, we have to, remember that surgery?" He says, "No, don't take me there. That doctor is not my friend. He is going to injure me. Don't take me." It's okay. Be quiet. It'll be all right. He was crying and so on and so forth, but finally he's very happy that he got some of the work done. Ishvara is exactly like that. That we feel that, you know, why should I be given this dukkha? It is in fact a necessary part for me to grow further. And the welfare of myself is the paramount aspect of Ishvara. Now comes this slide. Can you move it a bit more?
Sure. Why do we say God is benevolent? It is what it is. I guess it has.
No, benevolent in the sense that your well-being is being looked at. The love in God is ultimately for you, for your own good.
So including the dukkha.
Including the dukkha. This is what I was talking about. So in that sense, the word benevolent is used. Perhaps it's not a Hindu word. We don't use that word. It's more of a Western word.
So I have a very basic ignorant question.
Yeah.
So when we pray God, part of it is also stotra. We praise God, right?
Yes.
So why we need to do that? If
Okay.
God is so benevolent, why we need to deliberately, like Vishnu Sahasranama and all this, we praise God, like, you know?
Okay, it's the same question about doing namaste in the beginning and then understanding it. Okay? You have to first just do it without understanding. So an example given to me was that supposing Einstein was giving a lecture at Stanford and he was being introduced. Okay? The proper thing to have for introducing Einstein is a knowledgeable physicist who appreciates what Einstein has done. He praises Einstein. He says, "My God, this guy is amazing. Let me tell you what he has done." People don't know that. He doesn't know that. Supposing he was asked to please introduce Einstein. If he doesn't know that, he's going to not praise him. He has to understand what the greatness of this scientist is. Better still, he understands some of the principles of what his work has done. His introduction to Einstein will be enormously well. So therefore, the stuti of Ishvara is for you to focus your mind on the greatness of what the whole creation is. And then you turn that into an understanding.
So it's not focused on a particular God, it's focused on the whole creation. The creation itself is
not different.
Yeah, they both are not different.
They're not different.
No,
They're
if
the
somebody
same.
argues with you why God has to be this power hierarchy, okay? But to justify that, it's not the God, it's the whole creation, like, you know, because the creation itself is.
I think there is one slight difference, which you may want to look at. Think about a mother and a father. They are both parents, but there is a role called mother, there is a role called father. Similarly, God, when you took at Saguna Rupa, when you create a certain characteristic, which is what we are getting there, the idea is then you have given a name, you have given a form. And so it is like you have to, just like if you want something from mother, you don't try to describe or you don't try to praise father. You try to appeal to the mother and mother's qualities to get something from the mother. So the praise or a prayer, see, there is a big difference because temples are not prayer halls for us, whereas the church is a prayer hall. It's similarly, when you go, the idea of bhakti or idea of worshipping, idea of prayer is to connect with that energy, that particular form, that particular set of gunas, so that you can get that oneness, you can get that karuna, you can get that person's benevolence for you. That is what. So you do it differently for father, you do it differently for mother, like that you do differently for different times.
I think I'm a little bit clear now. Earlier I used to think that it's a power hierarchy. It's not that, but I am trying to impart some of the good qualities so that I am, it's my selfishness rather than I used to say. I used to think that people is about my surrendering to the power, but it's not about surrendering to the power, but I'm trying to get some good things.
The word.
That's the way I'm connecting to
The
him.
word we use is invoke.
Yeah, invoke.
Beautiful word.
Yeah, and just to make sure, in a Advaita, there is a particular way, that is how we do. But in Dvaita, where you do look at, you invoke, in addition to that, you surrender. Whereas in Visishta Advaita, they might even call it different words, Sharanagati. So the idea is, different ways of religion or different sampradayas talk about the bhakti in a different way. Even in Advaita, which is about the non-dual nature between the God and you, even Shankara wrote a large number of stotras. The reason for that is the bhakti and the gnana actually feed one another and they have to flow in another. One gives you the shraddha, and that shraddha, when it matures, it gives you the gnana. So the idea is, it is not like in one sampradaya you don't pray at all, just because we focus on Brahman. You are Brahman, I am Brahman. But at the same time, there is a certain way in which you, again it comes back to the word, you invoke. So these are all different paths, karma marga, gnana marga, bhakti marga, raj, yoga marga, all of them. Each of them are ways in which you invoke, you connect with the divine in you and outside of you. Yep. So this is a very big mischief some people use to say in Hinduism this way, in Advaita this way, in other sampradayas this way. No, there is, the idea is, where do you come from? What are you most familiar with? And how do you want to connect? And so you can, if you feel like you are following the path of knowledge and logic and all of them, if you want to connect with the Nirguna Brahma, fine, you can do it. But many of us at different times, we feel helpless. We need to surrender our ego and our identity to something that is higher than our own identity. That's when you can invoke the God. That's when you can pray, you can surrender, you can ask for Saranagati. These are all the paths of bhakti. So while it looks like different sampradayas are very different, but they all flow and connect and support each other. It is just a question of what practice do you want to do? In fact, what do you want to teach your counseling students? That's what I would add to that.
This is articulated in Bhagavad Gita very well.
Yeah.
Very well. So there are three aspects, as Prasadji just said. One is Karma Yoga, which is step number one. The second one is Bhakti, prayers, prayerful attitude, leading up to Jnana. So, really speaking, if you want to divide the three segmentation in Bhagavad Gita, this is very clearly done. It is repeated. So you have Karma Yoga, and it's not like you just finish Karma Yoga and then you go to Bhakti Yoga. You, as Prasadji just said, you do Karma Yoga, but to enhance it, you go to Bhakti Yoga. Mm. And then you also take advantage of the understanding that you have about Jnana. And if that is not complete, you may means that your Karma Yoga is not complete. And so you go back and forth, but these are the three segments of the Bhagavad. Okay, let me move on.
Maybe we should finish this up quickly.
Okay.
Because I don't think.
I think that the Antaryami section we have already talked a little bit about. And if time permits, later on in the discussion, I'll be glad to go over it. And now let's go to the next section, which is the Hindu view of the world. And we pretty much covered that. One is that no matter whether something is sentient or insentient, it is sacred to the Hindus. How often we have seen this, that the rickshaw driver raised to the rickshaw, it's an insentient thing. The shopkeeper has a Lakshmi in the shop, and so, or you go to the temple. And I think one of the peculiar things about Hinduism, which is so obvious that we don't even talk about it, that the heart is the temple. And by the way, it's very interesting, I read that in the first 400 years of Christianity, the emphasis was not going to the church. It was exactly like the Hindus, where you have your own, vigraha at home. You do your own puja, and like we do. It's nice to go to a temple as more of a social thing or anything, but you don't need to. Things changed over the realm of Christianity, where going to the church was very important. Anyway, we have kept the Hinduism. One other thing I want to point out, in the entire history of humankind, the principles and practice of Hinduism has not changed. It has not, there is no evolution necessary. It's still, the lessons of the Bhagavad Gita were just as important 2,000 years ago as they are now. It's very important. It's not as though we don't know enough now that we got some new knowledge, let's revise chapter number 2. It is very prevalent, it's very authentic, and it stays the same. So one other thing, a comment on, you notice this very much, is the diversity and unity. And the fact of the matter is, diversity is the apparent truth, and unity is the truth. Just like you have the waves of an ocean are the apparent truth. The water is the truth. So it doesn't really matter. This is why we are not hung up on how you pray, who you pray, when you pray, whether or not you pray. It's totally up to you. Really speaking, it is all. So this is why our tolerance for other religions, other thoughts, and so on. You don't see them. It is all part of Ishvara, all part of the same creation. Yes, we don't follow that because we think that this is either incomplete or wrong in some cases, but that's okay. Let people follow what they want to do. This is one of the fundamental aspects of our view of the world. And I think this requires more thinking, but our thinking is that the Purusha, the conscious being, is the movie screen upon which all our experiences are taking place. You and I, in fact, as the same Purusha, there's only one Purusha. The aspects of Prakriti are different, but there is one Purusha, which is Ishvara, which is you, which is I. It's only one Purusha. And that is the one movie screen which is unchanging, timeless. It was never not there. There's no question it will never be there. This is what the elements of the Bhagavad Gita are. But the Prakriti are different stories on the movies, different colors, different happenings. Doesn't matter. And you enjoy it or you suffer from it until you can't stand the heat. And then, it's just like, I remember Swami Maheshananji said this in one of the Panchadashi. He said, no one can say that something which is not true does not affect you. Because you can say, if the world was so mithya, this is what the Vedantins say, that it is all mithya. Maya. So the people who don't understand the Hinduism, they say, well, if it was mithya, then why does it move you? You're crying. Then you can never cry because of mithya. So we say, oh, really? Try going into a really good movie. You find handkerchiefs come out. They all know this is all false, but they'll still cry. So that's not a good reason to say that really mithya does not affect you. It does. But like a good movie, you have a cry, then you eat some popcorn, and then you come out and say, oh, that was nice. So this is exactly the diversity and the unity of the thoughts. Now I think we pretty much done that. Now let's go to the last slide. The Hindu view of ourselves, the individual. Okay. We've already talked about this, that the end goal for all of us is freedom from all dukkha. And the basic belief of Hinduism, at least in Vedanta, some of the variations may be different, is that we are already free and we don't realize it. This is a very important thing because freedom means infinity, not a large number. A large number is only temporary. If you win a lottery for 1.6 billion,
and now 2.2.
Is it what?
Now 2.2 billion.
Is it 2.2?
Yeah.
You are much more current than I am.
Still focusing on Prasadji and the lottery. Despite all the
That's the whole thing. It is not about Vedas somewhere, sometime. It is about here, Sadhyamukti San. It is about becoming conscious of what is practical, what is imminent, what is transcendental. You deal with all of them, and it is not about you have to give up. That is the one where there is a big difference. It tells you how to live your life, how to earn your money, how to enjoy the life, how to enjoy the pleasures, but do it from a dharmic path. Yep. So the dharma has to be the filter through which you enjoy the artha and kama. So it's an extreme, actually that's an important point, because if you are telling to the counselors, Hindu way of life is about only the afterlife, you will be giving a wrong notion. It is not about giving up. It is more about non-attached engagement. Just because somebody wrote to me saying in Chicago, saying, hey, have you bought the lottery ticket? Why? It is 2.2 billion. So everywhere that has become a very big number. That doesn't necessarily mean I have not bought a lottery ticket in probably 25 years. But, that thought comes to me, interesting, maybe I should buy it. The key is recognizing these are all the things that are in the place, and you make a choice when to buy it, when not to buy it, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. That freedom is called mukti. It can be in a transcendental mukti, or it can be some non-attachment to whatever is tempting you.
So just on that point that I was talking about earlier about the infinity. So no matter how happy we are in our lives, there's always a point we want something more, because it doesn't last. It doesn't last. And even if it lasts, all of a sudden you are a billionaire, and what is the name of this magazine that publishes all the billionaires list? Forbes. They say this guy next door to you has got twice as much money as you do. And all of a sudden your happiness is diminished. So largeness is not a true measure of freedom. Infinity is. And infinity can never be reached. You are either already infinite and you don't know it, or you'll never be able to reach it. so happens you're already infinite and you don't know it. So this is the very premise of Hinduism, that we are already done. This is what is called praptasya prapti, in acquisition of what they already acquired, as opposed to apraptasya prapti. This is the very basis of the my job is to give you some of the basis of the Hindu religion, and this is what talks about the view of the individual. Another one, I think we've already talked about the achievables and the verifiable belief in karma and so on. The next point is we have a nuanced view of karma, which explains the fact that we have chances in various lives. It talks about life after death, the continuity of our understanding, our responsibilities in the following way. We say that karma has two components. One is an immediate karma called drishtaphala. The other one is a stored one, which is called adrishtaphala. So one is gross and the other one is subtle. It's not just one. Okay? One story was told, which was really very important for me to understand. In a crowded bazaar in India, where buses and taxis and rickshaws and people are all crowding together, there was an old man walking on a stick. And it was rainy season. There was mud on the ground. The bus comes in and takes a right turn. And there is a young man that pushes this old man into the ground so he falls down and perhaps even breaks something. And everybody says, why the heck did you do that? See what you did? It turned out he saw that the bus did not see the old man, and he saved his life. And at first they were all trying to attack him. Then they realized what the fellow has done. This is the difference between drishtaphala and adrishtaphala. Imagine the punya of a person who goes out of his way to save somebody else's life. Can there be a bigger punya than that? But the drishtaphala was that the fellow fell down, perhaps broke a bone, and everybody was just berating him. Why did you do that? Then they found out. So therefore, it's very possible that the adrishtaphala cannot be done in this lifetime. We have so many punyas and papas in our segment, and so this is the reason why someone is born with silver spoon in their mouth. Other one is born with problems. It is all a continuous, just, and scientific way. And this is what is called karma. So the karma theory that we have is not just theoretical. It is part and parcel of who we are, where we are going, and the whole play of the whole creation. So this is one of the things that's very important.
So the other way I interpret about drishta and adrishta.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you do continue to do good things, we may not see the result immediately.
Quite right.
But,
absolutely.
But we might
it
might manifest in this birth or
very much so. Very much so. Absolutely. Totally true.
And that's the reason why the idea of multiple lifetimes is essential to think about, because it is not like you will go to heaven or you will go to hell, and it is not like you are going to be complete. But the idea, even in the karma, they talk about different levels of karma, sanchita karma, agami karma, all of them. But we are not going into that. The key is to recognize, as you rightly say, some things you may say as a counselor. This becomes an important differentiation. Yes. People will ask again and again, what is the difference between the Hinduism and other things? Why do you believe in life after birth, life after death, and all of that? So you may need to be able to look at it and say, you think about it a linear time. In the most of the other religions, we think about a cyclical time. In a cyclical time, because the anadi concept and what we talked about as not being born, all of them come back to the one fundamental tenet that there is no linear way in which time is divided, past, present, and future. So there are some things which we might have done, as you rightly say, the good things that you are doing that might have, effect when you least expect, or good things that are happening to you might be some things that might have come from. By doing it, it gives a certain sense of peace of mind, number one. Number two, because it is about the continuity, we have chances again and again and again. So we don't become a sinner. Like in a Christian concept, you are a sinner and you need Jesus Christ or you need something else to be able to become a person who will be looked at positively by the God. But there are no such intermediaries. We have the Messiah concept in a different way. We only say gurus or to a certain extent avatars that come in, but ultimately it is your karma phala, it is what you have done in the past or what you are doing, and it is your interconnectedness with the other parts of who you are actually makes it. That's, in Bhagavad Gita, when you talk about when Gaurav and Ashwini, when they look at, they will go into details of some of these type of things, but the idea of cyclical time gives us a freedom to recognize what I have done, I can let go. I am not a sinner or I am not a great person, but it all comes and goes based on what karmas am I engaged in. So focus on the karmas right now and continue to trust that there is something else, invisible force and invisible blessings are with you. Maybe a practical way, may not be exact way I would translate it, but for a counselors to simply understand and communicate it, this what you said as a last slide is an important one.
It's interesting, this idea of a nuanced way of understanding karma. I'll give you one example. Just recently, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a young man who had a massive brain hemorrhage and died at the age of 48. He left about 3 kids and a very young wife. And I was asked to speak to this family. And I hope I helped. And I think I did, in the sense that I could see some glimmer of peace in the wife's mind. And she came to me later on also and thanked me and so on. What I said was this. I still remember a story from my childhood. I was 9 years old. And I had a teacher in the class called Mrs. Sate. And I used to really love her. And so much so my mother used to say, you love her more than you love me. And it was true. It was fun going to her classes. And I was about 9 years old. One day the principal came in. And the principal never came to our class. Why will the principal come to a class? The headmistress came and said, boys and girls, please sit down. I have some news for you. Today is Mrs. Sate's last day. And she is not going to be your teacher. I don't think I've ever cried so much in my life. All of us were really in bad shape. And he said, how could they do this to us? He says, what kind of a school is this? Don't have any, we love her, we want her. Later on, our friend, my mother and my father explained that she got a vice principal's job. She was doing so well. She had to be gone someplace else. So in an untimely death, it's exactly like the same situation. How could this happen to us? The fellow is only 48, he was so nice and so on and so forth. It is not for us to tell. There is some higher order that transfers people from place to place. And yes, our teachers also said, in these kinds of situations, don't shy away from grief. There's a difference. As a counselor, if you are asked to be at the bedside of someone who has a terminal illness, okay, this is a very important distinction you need to make. You need to grieve with them, because grief is important for you, because it's a very untimely separation of the child, the family from the somebody. But there's a difference between grief and complete lack of shraddha and confusion. How could this happen? This world is unjust to me. And I'm not going to do like this. And I'm going to be a different person. That's not necessary. Because Hinduism says there is a higher order. Who gets promoted where, who gets transferred to what, it's not for us to know. Certainly we do the best we can, but in fact a nuanced way of karuna, a nuanced way of Ishvara is a very important element, tenet of Hindus. So with that, I close my section.
I think from the counselor point of view, as even like, for us, the challenge is accepting I mean, I can't accept a lot of things like, personally. That leads to grief and in a perpetual manner. And even more challenging is like you need a job of like convincing her to accept that. I think that skill set is even more difficult. I don't know. I mean, we might learn in the future, but it's even more difficult because we need to convince ourselves and then.
That's exactly right. I think our familiarity with the basics of what we are, that understanding is really will equip you to become more, to accept this challenge. Anyway, thank you so much. You had a question, sorry?
Yeah. So when you explain somebody that they lost a family member in such a young age, so I understand that, okay, that person who left has a higher
some other situation,
place.
Yeah.
So that is fine for the person who left.
Yeah.
But the people who are missing that person, how do we confirm?
So,
how do
good
we
question.
them?
Very good question. And the answer to that is that the new challenges in their life will ultimately be very good for them. You cannot say that on the face of it. But the truth of the matter is, all dukkha, all challenges, I'll use it just a kind of like a hypothetical example. Suppose there was this, and that's not case of this person who really died. But suppose the wife was really not working and was not interested in working, not interested in really supporting the family because the father used to do that. Let's say, just as an example. You know what will happen? Now she has to become the breadwinner. She's stopped playing cards. She has to now start working, taking care of the finances of the family and so on. And it may be tough for her for the next 5-6 years. I give you a couple of examples from my own life. My kids were born with some problems. This younger one that had to go to the surgery. And my wife never really ever said, why did it happen to me? She took on the challenge of supporting this boy. And he's turned out to be a wonderful person. We are all much better for it. So things happen, but we have to relate to them that everything will turn out to be okay.
I would just add, and we are going to go into group discussion. I will just add, first is the empathy. Empathize with them, like Kundanji said last time. Connect with them. Do not give your opinion. And remember to use the skills Kundanji brought in, like listening. It is not about advising, but you need to listen. You need to listen from a deep place. Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, they talk about in yoga, and Maitra, Karunayevacha, they say in Bhagavad Gita. With a certain friendship, with an empathy, with a compassion, be with them. Allow them to grieve.
allow them to do. At that time, do not explain, do not say this is the way it is, or these are the faith, these are the Hinduism. Deep listening. Once you deeply listen,
And build the trust.
and yeah,
Build the trust.
build the trust with them. And then sometimes it is extremely important, you do not give any answers to them. And you do not try to show a particular path in which they can do. The grief can only be healed if they discover their own answers and that is connected with their faith. So in that particular path, we need to be mirrors rather than teachers. They may have their own teachers, they may have their own relatives who may give advice. But as a counselor, it is important for us to keep putting a mirror, number one. Number two, first listening. Number two, putting a mirror and then being with them. And over a period of time, if they show interest in something, bring them to whoever or work with them, and then over a period of time, as the grief reduces, with the time it does, at that time, maybe there are further discussions about philosophy, certain things may be most appropriate. So we'll take a group. Okay, one last question.
I just kind of, all this discussion is very good, and if you have a conversation with another adult, they're probably, more open to listen to them. It's easy to have the conversation. My thing is, and this is something I brought up a couple of classes ago, when my son went through a very traumatic experience of his classmate committing suicide. So what do we say to the children? Vijayji, maybe in your experience, was there something that you could talk to the children about?
I think without really, as Prasadji just said, instead of pontificating or anything like this, you just have to give them an assurance that it will all be okay. It will turn out to be okay. That things happen for something, for some reason. And it may not be for you and I to grasp the enormity of it all. But regardless of that, it will end well for everyone. Even for the person who has committed suicide, he'll have some life somewhere where he's taken care of. And for you and I, as who are left behind grieving, it is appropriate for us to grieve. How will it be that you don't grieve and you start laughing or not that? But in the end, it will all turn out to be okay. That's all we have to do. For the adults, you can be more explicit. For a child, you just have to hug and kiss and give them the solace and so on. And I think it's a degree of sincere confidence on our part goes a long way. Because the kids can see that they're just making up some stories just to make me feel good. If you say this.
Authenticity.
I'm saying that the concept of karma is very hard to explain to a child.
There's very much so. I remember one thing that
actually, let's not go into anymore. We should stop.
No, one last thing. So what our teachers had said, give examples that this has happened. You're not the only one. This has happened before, and it all turned out to be okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you. So there are choice points because it is 3 hours and then we have 1 hour left. There are a couple of things. I have whatever I want to cover, most of it I covered. There is a framework which I gave. I instead of 1 hour, I can do it in 10-15 minutes and we can have group discussion. That's one option. Second option is we have covered a variety of things, tenets, how they apply to counseling, why they are important. Why is it that we have chosen Bhagavad Gita? What are all the other things which are underneath that we could go to get a deeper sense of understanding? We have looked at it. So if you want, we can do a group discussion now and then I can do the presentation. But one logical thing, because of what we have done, it may be meaningful to spend 10-15 minutes to connect the dots and then get into a group discussion. Would you be comfortable if I just do that?
Makes sense.
Okay. So again, as you can see as a counselor, and especially the question which Mangala you are bringing up, these are complex. Oh, sorry, I need to be on the other side, right? Okay, good. I'll try to remember that. Yeah. So there are complexities, right? Even here, where can I stand, where can I not stand?
The boundaries.
So the boundaries. So there are several things, traditions, diaspora perspectives, the speed, everything. There are large number of things that bring up. And all of them have to be dealt with, like even the time. And ethically, how do we deal with it? What is it appropriate? And as you rightly say, with a kid, if you try to explain karma theory, it may not be appropriate, and it may not be authentic for you to be able to do that also. So, especially living in Silicon Valley, because this counselor program is for the Bay Area and in the Silicon Valley, there are three dominant things that come up for us. One is the science and technology. This is the birthplace of where technology is emerging. So we want to use the logic, we want to use science, we want to use a certain rational way of understanding some things. That's an extremely important, because everything that we see are created out of it. So from a rational scientific perspective, religion looks like a slippery slope, or it looks like not understandable, it is something that is not meaningful. Generally, the religion understanding comes down to two basic things. Whether you take Abrahamic religions, or whether you take Dharma religions, whether you take Taoism, or any of the Christian, non-Christian religions also, if you look at, beliefs are critical, faith is critical, because without the beliefs and faith, several times, like somebody brought, actually I think Gaurav had sent a set of questions. You talk about all this Vedanta and philosophy, but on a day-to-day basis, Hinduism comes down to all the festivals. We just finished Durga Puja, and we have Diwali coming up, or we have these rituals, or the marriage. These are the things which we need to do. How do you really reconcile the, what you might call, various kinds of rituals, beliefs, practices with the underlying theme? So sometimes there is a conflict. Some people say, why can't I just be spiritual? Why should I actually be religious? These are some things which you may face as a counselor that it comes down to. The third perspective that comes down to is, all this is good, like we brought up, if I can get that $2.2 billion, I don't need all of it. Just maybe a couple million will actually help me a lot more. So it comes down to bottom line. If my success, my growth, all this is good, but if I can get a promotion, or if I can get a job in Amazon and they give me some more of these RSUs or whatever, the idea is it all comes down to immediate, practical, material prosperity, because that's how we measure business. Between the three of them, there is always a conflict. What I say is, the counselor job is going to be intersection between the three. Where does the rationality comes into picture? Where does the belief come into picture? Where does the business come into picture? We need to really be walking a very careful path of integrating, making sure which domain are you talking from. If you are talking business, you need to be able to use the measures that are appropriate for them. And same thing with spirituality and religion, same thing with science and technology. That's an important conflict that you need to be careful about. So now, if you try to look at religion, because this is a confusion that comes up for many people. What is religion? What is spirituality? What is wisdom? As we saw, Karma Marga, Jnana Marga, and Bhakti Marga are like the three circles. Many of the religions do not necessarily differentiate, other than Hinduism, and to a certain extent Buddhism and Jainism also have got some of this. The Dharmic religions have got this a little bit more. But as Vijayji pointed out, the Swadharma concept will come in. We'll talk about it a little bit. But for the time being, values and ethics, behaviors and rituals, and the beliefs and convictions, these are three different domains. Majority of the time, we need to recognize on a practical way, we try to put them all on single layer. That's called a flat world approach. Oh, if this happens, why is that belief coming in? Or if that happens, how about my value? I believe in telling the truth. The confusion comes for day-to-day people because they are mixing up these three things. As a counselor, if you can learn to separate out what domain are they talking about. Is it in action that there is a confusion? Is it in the value system that they have a confusion? Or is it in their belief system that they have a confusion? If you can listen to, through deep listening that Kundanji had also talked about, through deep listening, first identify where is the confusion. Where is it that they are actually struggling with? If you can bring that, you will also immediately see, should you tell them, follow the karma marga, just keep doing some of this, or believe in God, or believe in something. Without going into it, there are certain things which you talk about. There are what you call, in philosophy, they talk about avarana, vikshepa, mala. There are different kinds of problems that are associated with it. What it essentially means is, for some things they are struggling with, ask them to develop a discipline. Keep practicing. Whether it's a yoga, if you can't just say, I will read a book about all the asanas and tomorrow I will be able to do. You need to develop the muscle memory. Similarly, certain kinds of practices, you need to help them to say, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. It will come with time. It will not happen overnight. If I need to get rid of my back pain, or if I need to become more, stretching my body, if I need that, I can do it by knowledge or faith. It has to be done by karma. So as a counselor, you need to know when to prescribe certain repetitive disciplines and practices and certain kinds of things that they need to engage with, whether it is going to yoga or something else. And when is it that their belief system is creating all kinds of confusion? They may listen to different kinds of messages from different people, and their faith is, I believe this in this guru, I believe in this God, I go to this temple, I go to. So sometimes as a counselor, you may have to say, hey, pick one, stay with it. Other things you may do as additional, but it is like, if you are eating dal chawal, why do we call it dal chawal? Because that is the fundamental core. And then we may add different kinds of curries, we may add different kinds of desserts. We need to help them to say what is their essential God or essential faith that they need to follow. Then the third one it comes down to is the knowledge. When they are up for discussion, when they are trying to bring some clarity, different things can be brought. Only thing what I'm trying to say here is, the religion has got all the three components. If you take away certain aspects of it, spirituality is, yes, I am a Christian, but I believe in yoga and I do certain aspects, certain vipassana meditation. These are spiritual practices. So that means you can adapt and you can bring in different kinds of practices, different kinds of stuff. But I do not believe that I belong to a religion, but I am actually spiritual. What is amazing about Hinduism is that it allows you to adapt and take various aspects of practices without having to really, because Hinduism is not considered to be a religion, because it is one of the oldest, it's a way of life, it's a way of looking at the world. As Vijayji said, it's a vision. As long as you have that samyak drushti, like this actually samyak gyan, samyak drushti, samyak charitra even comes in Jainism. But the concept of having that samyak drushti, having that universal vision, you brought up right up from in the beginning. When we call you, and especially in Bhagavad Gita, that is what Krishna talks about. When you look at that perspective, practices and various kinds of faith, it all becomes workable. That's why the darshan has a shat darshanas, 6 darshanas. You can follow any one of them. But there is only one truth. Ekam sat. There is only one truth. Vipraha bahudha vadanti. Wise people speak about it in different ways. So the ultimate wisdom is to recognize you may have different points of view, you may have different faith, you may have different sampradayas, but it all comes down to what is it that you are doing as a counselor, what is most authentic and appropriate. Stay with that and trust yourself in that. So what does that really mean? I'm connecting this with Kundanji's saying, transcendental, some of it. So the idea is, There are Hindu principles, Hindu perspectives, Hindu best practices. Best practices, rituals, all of them are transactional. That is what we encounter day after day after day. But for many other religions, that's the beginning and the end, other than a certain amount of faith. But for Hinduism, there is a depth of understanding that can go. Whatever festivals, pujas that you are doing, if you understand the meaning and why you are doing that puja, that enhances it. So even if some pujas are not properly done, if you haven't recited certain mantras, there are even things saying mantra hinam, bhakti hinam, kriya hinam. There are various ways what you are doing. There are ways of actually doing prayaschitta. That means the key is to recognize the wisdom of Hinduism is at the core. Not just the rituals, not just the values, but also the certain jnana that comes in. If you can help as a counselor to think about what is appropriate to them, what would be the most meaningful, whether it is just a hug with a kid who has gone through and saying, we don't understand what it is, but let us deal with what we need to deal with, the grief, what we need to deal with the day to day, what you need to do for school, and how can you actually be the courage and pillar of strength for your other friends. You need to bring that manodhairyam, that's ability to stay with it. You need to develop that equanimity so that your friends who are younger than you do not get connected, do not get what you call upset with all of that. If you can tell them and help them to become a pillar of strength in that, then you are actually taking it from a transactional perspective. You are transforming their mindset and a certain way in which, I think the word Vijayji used was the attitude. It is extremely important. Hinduism is all about the attitude with which you do things. It is that's why I say yogastha kuru karmani. They say whatever actions you do it from a yoga state of mind. What does that yoga state? That is Bhagavad Gita statement I read in the 2nd chapter. Where does that come from? That means your actions have to come from a certain equanimity, aligning your body and the mind, yoking the mind and the body. Do whatever you do from that state of mind. That is actually called yoga. So you can interpret it from a practical perspective. You can talk about it from a principles perspective, but you can also go from transcendental. Where does the transcendental come? How is it different from transformational? Transformation is what you want to bring in as a counselor. But transcendental is what happens beyond what you do, beyond what happens. Something begins to emerge. Something begins to take place. That's what we call blessing. It is not that we deserve everything that we are getting. There are certain things which we are blessed with, certain strengths, certain capabilities. Like somebody said, I can go to bed, but the sleep comes not by my effort. I may eat right food, but the health is not something that I can take it for granted. Especially people who try to lose weight by all the right means, whether it works or whether it doesn't work. That means the transcendental element, the divine in each one of us, that divine acts in her own way, his own way. When we are open to that, beyond the mindset, beyond the practices, that curiosity, that openness, that purnam, that idea of wholeness, if we can trust that, I think that differentiates from many other religions. See, the Buddhism and the Jainism to a certain extent, but not quite, it comes from top down is Hinduism, the holism, the whole perspective, the sampurna bhava, purnamadam purnamidaha purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnamevavasishyate. What does it mean? That means this whole universe is one and the same. That is what Vijayji was saying. Anadi, the nimitta karana and the upadana karana, everything is one and the same. That wholeness is one. What comes out of that is the world, and what we call that as Brahman or God or anything else. When we come from and transit and interact with that and explain it, that is when we are in the transcendental domain. That's why the Hindu Gnana sometimes is a holistic, bigger perspective. It becomes a little bit abstract. As a counselors, That's why even in this program, we didn't want to take all the Upanishads, we didn't want to say, we said, stay with Bhagavad Gita. As a counselor, that's a good thing. But you need to know that there are Brahma Sutras and there are Upanishads and there are Darshana Shastra, but those are all transcendental. So start with transactional as a counselor, help them to change their mindset so that there can be a transformation in their way of looking at their grief or whatever they are going through. And finally, find a way to bring some blessings into their lives and your life and learn about it. And transcendental stuff works in its own way. Okay. And the last 2-3 things, which comes down to whatever I said. In the right hand side, I talk about deed, talk, and thought. You must have heard of Kaya, Vacha, Manasa. Trikarana Suddhi, they call it. What does this Trikarana Suddhi mean? For example, when you do Vishnu Sahasranam, at the end of it, the last stotra comes, Kayena, Vacha, Manasa, Indriyerva, Yatmana, Va, Prakrute, Swabhava. With all these, I do this. Prakrute, Swabhava. Through that, I do. What am I doing? Karomi, yat karomi. All these I'm doing. Sakalam parasmai. I'm doing all this, but rest of it, what am I doing with that? Narayana iti samarpayami. I am actually, after I do Kaya, Vacha, Manasa, Buddhi, Ahankara, all of this, once I do it, not before I do it, after I do everything which is in my control, Narayana, Sakalam parasmai, Narayana iti samarpayami. That means, when I do all of it, I have a total integrity in doing what I'm doing, the rituals I'm doing, understand the core tenets, understand what it is, and I'm operating from that larger consciousness, that samyak drushti. I'm developing that oneness, God and me are part of the same consciousness. We are all one and the same. There is only consciousness. That chit swabhava, satchidananda we call it, right? That part of it when we do, when we leave it there, then we have come from all of this universal thing into one. And that oneness is what we call, whether it is the oneness, God and, world is same, or whether we call Advaita Bhava. But most of us don't operate there. So we need to keep looking at where are we on the spectrum. Same thing when you try to talk about it from theory perspective. That means when we are teaching you as an education, these come down to perspective, principles, and practices. Perspective is a translation for Gnana from my perspective, from my point of view. Gnana can be translated as a knowledge, but because data, information, knowledge, we are in the technology age, sometimes we misuse the word knowledge in the scientific sense. So a better way to think about it is you have to come from a certain transcendental knowledge, which is the perspective, a bigger perspective, a holistic perspective. Then principles are values in action. Whatever values that's why we talked about, if you can practice it, when you show it through your behavior, when you walk your talk, your children will be able to do. When you are counseling, when they see you behaving, it becomes much more useful. That's the way tenets have to be put into practice. Then comes practices. Rituals are nothing but set of practices, set of disciplines. You create a structure, yama, niyama, yasana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, samadhi. When you talk about the first ones, yama, niyamas, you have to put it into practice. I tell the truth. I will not steal. I will do certain kinds of things. These are for you establishing a certain code of conduct within the community. As a counselor, you need to live as an exemplary person to a certain extent. Then your counseling becomes much, much more impactful. So this is, don't get confused, don't look at it. This is just to show everything, because we are doing it as a class. You need to understand the theory perspective. It is for me an integral diagram to say whatever the fountain model is, to say we need to get that spirituality to rise from inside out. It needs to come from their practices, actions and experiments people are doing, discovering their own principles based on the patterns, and out of that they conclude what their values are, and out of them they discover their own faith. They begin to develop different mindsets. That is what I call fountain model, which generates a practical wisdom. Like for example, some of you, for every session, you are bringing your practical wisdom, because some of you have lived a life, you have tried to understand it, you have your own points of view, you bring your wisdom into what this is. So that is called, on the right hand side, the practical wisdom that you have. Whereas we also say, like Vijayji was saying, when a guru is saying, the guru does not interact in the beginning. They will give a discourse. Once they give a discourse, they will answer some questions, and some questions they say, no, I'm not going to answer this question because you haven't actually earned the right to ask this question, because you haven't paid that much attention. Or even if I answer this, at this moment it won't make sense to you. Why is that? It is not because of the arrogance with which Guru is saying. There are certain things you have to earn it. Even in Upanishads, there are stories where even the Devendra and the Guru, the teacher Vairochana, the kings of Rakshasa and Devatas, both of them go to one Kashyapa Prajapati, because he says self-knowledge is the most important. They say, oh, we need to learn about this. So they go and say, please teach us. He says, what gives you a right to ask? They say, okay, how do I earn that right? They say, serve me for 32 years. They serve for 32 years and they get to ask one important question. They say, what is this self? How do we discover our self? They say, well, when you sleep, the person who is seeing, who is dreaming, oh, I see. They go away and the Vairochana says, that means I need to sleep a lot, because then I can have a lot of dreams and I can have experience of myself. But the Indra says, there seems to be something wrong here. I want to discuss more. So both of them come back, another 32 years. After another 32 years, they get another question. He says, sir, it doesn't look like we need to be asleep to discover ourselves. That doesn't look like. He said, well, we look in the mirror. Yeah. When you are looking in the mirror, when you see yourself, who is seeing that? That means the person who is seeing yourself, you need to examine whether there is self in that. Vairochana goes and says, oh, that means I need to do muscle building, I need to eat well, I need to wear good clothes, I need to really look good. Then when I see myself, that I can see a wonderful self. Indra says, there seems to be something wrong. And they go back another 32 years. Then the third time he answers saying, they ask, what if there is no mirror? What if it is not about sleeping? They say, well, when you go even near a river, if you look into the lake, a quiet lake, if you see a reflection, you will discover yourself. Then Vairochana says, I got all my answers. Now, not only I do this, I go, I frolic, I have lots of picnics near the rivers, I swim a lot, I enjoy, I think I got my answers, and he goes away. Then Indra comes back and have a larger discussion, spend some more time and discovers the self-knowledge. What does this all mean? The disciplines and rituals will only point the direction. Then values, you discover it by practicing. That's why Dhyanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana, there are various ways, various exercises where you need to self-reflect. Some of the answers, when you say, I'm not satisfied with this answer, it is not about satisfying where you are an answer. When Vijayji gives an answer, when somebody else gives an answer, you need to stay with that answer long enough to make it your own. Because the true answer actually comes from within. Any teacher can only show you a path. When that happens, that discipline that you have to understand and reflect on the word, that is what gives you a deeper understanding. That is the religion model. That is what we call a rainfall model. Interestingly, in most of the Christianity or Abrahamic religions, you only have a rainfall model. That spirituality arising from within comes from Hinduism, and to a certain extent, dharmic religions have got this other side. Only difference is, in dharmic religions, as Vijayji pointed out, they focus on the swabhava, but the concept of swadharma, discovering that part of it, is about the spirit in flow. You need to really work with it, and that's all there is that you need to get. It is like just a combination. So, so only thing is values. You need to practice those values. Between the practical wisdom, common good. What does that mean? When you are a counselor, focus on the common good. What can I do? How can I help? Instead of just focusing on personal benefit. That's what you have committed for a year, to be able to serve the society, to be able to bring that in. So this is not just like a, what you call a Eastern ways of looking at it. Look at this concept of Ardhanarishwara. Whatever Vijayji said earlier, the Shiva and the Shakti. Shiva does not exist without Shakti. That is the nature, that is the universe that is created. The intelligence is embedded in the nature. And similarly, the nature does not exist without the design of the intelligence. So when you want to know, to nurture, sustain, deal with this kinds of worldly stuff what we are going through, the change of climate and all of them, you need to understand the underlying intelligence that is driving it. These two are interdependent. That is where the holism comes into picture. That is where the Purnatva Bhava of the Hinduism becomes extremely important. It is not empty and meaningless as in Buddhism, even though it's also dharmic religion, because it looks at the emptiness. But this is about the completeness. And that completeness is not as tangible as in Buddhism. Buddhism, you can go to body sensations, you can go to breath, and then you can look at that. But in Hinduism, it says all of these are different layers which are coming in as a part of your nature. But to discover your own true nature, you need to keep saying, neti, neti, not this, not this, not this. When you shed that layers, you discover the intelligence that is behind the one that gives you the power. So this is what in Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter that comes in. These are, and so that means it is not just giving you a vision, it is giving you a project management approach. You have a holistic perspective. How do you take a right action, which is what you call Sattvika Karma. Sattvika Karma is taking a right action. And then how do you do that? You need to do it with Nishkama Karma. You need to be able to have a Karta Bhavana, they call it. You need to be able to say, detached engagement. You need to have role clarity. That is what is called Karta. Are you being, you are the one who is doing it, or is it being done through you? When you have that trustee feeling, that's what, by the way, in the Western management, they call it also servant leadership model. So many of these things are actually grounded in Bhagavad Gita. They can go anywhere else. How do you make decisions? The buddhi and dhruti. There is one more motivation, which is sukham. I translated sukham as motivation because what gives us the drive is what makes us comfortable. So if you look at it, this is a framework. It's a very nice framework. When you combine it with gunas of sattvic, rajasic and tamasic, it gives you a phenomenal way in which you can look at it and say, when am I being tamasic and I'm just letting things happen to me? Or when am I being rajasic and I become the driver and I want to be in control? But when am I actually being sattvic? I know when to drive and I know when to go back. When you have that Bhagavad Gita, it comes in. So let me start by saying, as a counselor, here are a simple set of practices based on what we said as a Hindu tenets, and some of them come down to. First, identify what is that is giving you a larger purpose. Purpose gives you meaning, and when purpose and meaning connect, you connect with the passion within you. So that is like energy flow. First, connect to a larger perspective. North Star is like a Dhruv Tara, we call it, right? Dhruv wanted to sit on his father's lap. He could not because his stepmother pushed him away saying, the stepson, he is the crown prince. Then this kid, a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, wanted to see, where am I? Why am I on the planet? What is my connection to role? What is my role? Then he goes and prays Vishnu, saying, I want to know what is my role in the universe. But by the time Vishnu comes, this young kid forgets. He says, what do you want? I don't know. But now that I saw you, this is more than enough. And this guy could get Vishnu to come and see him in a short amount of time that many people couldn't do it for lifetimes of tapas. He says, that's enough. No, no, no. You came to me. Now I'll give you. You want to find a purpose. I will put you right under the sun. Anybody who needs a direction, anybody who looks at what is possible, they look at you for guidance. He becomes a Dhrutara. Similarly, what is guiding your life? If you are being a counselor, why do you want to be? Become very clear in your mind what is driving, what is the larger purpose that is driving your communication, your contribution to the universe. Second, act appropriately and authentically. What does it mean? Like here, not only Shrutis say, Smritis give you guidance. Like there are something, Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat, Na Bruyat, Satyam Apriyam. So as a counselor, tell the truth as much as you can. But if you feel other people are not ready to take the truth, hold back. Wait for them and prepare them to ask you for the truth. Don't just say, oh, I'm a straight shooter. I just tell it as it is. That's inappropriate. As a counselor, you need to have the emotional intelligence to know what is it that you can tell that other people can take, what is it that you need to hold back. Then similarly, first of all, know when you need to help them through just hugging, listening. When do you need guidance? When do you need to send them to somebody else, a lawyer, if they need to do some what you call documents, or a real estate person, or a counselor, or somebody else, or when to just get out of the way and let them do what they need to do. Fourth one is, when do you use your intuition? Intuition is being able to see the whole without any kind of your own filtering. That means your own ego, your own identity is not getting in the way. When you counsel, you should counsel with 100% attention on what is there. Then you will know what you need to tell. Trust yourself. Pray and say, this family lost their somebody important. I have no idea how to be. This is my first counseling engagement. But God, please give me guidance on how I should be with them in such a way they can find some peace and I can be useful. I have no idea, but I'm willing to be your vessel. That kind of a prayer and that kind of a faith when you do, you will know what needs to be done. That is when you will get the appropriate thing. And finally, sometimes when you do as a counselor, what you do may work, may not work. People may like it, may not like it. And the key thing is you need to know when to stand in your own truth and when to surrender and say, I don't know, let me learn and come back. If you have that dhruti, if you have that ability to do that, then finally operate with the enlightened self-interest. Actually, I would say selfless interest, but that is not as practical. But start with the enlightened self-interest. Try to focus on what is the common good, larger good. There may be some benefits for you, but don't look at selfish interest. If you can do that, these are some simple guidelines for you to practice some of this. And I just try to combine from the tenets and Hindu perspective on simple guidelines that would be useful for you. Last week, you heard about listening. This week, you got some guidelines on what to do, hopefully based on understanding of the large wisdom called Hinduism and what you can do. So let me stop there. My request is we have about half an hour. My sense is if you can spend 20 minutes in a group, like 3 groups, and then 10 minutes, we will hear what you have. If there are any other questions we can deal with, we can look at it. That way, it is important for you to spend time with the group a little bit to see what is it that you are taking away today. How does it enhance your capability to be a Hindu counselor? If you can focus on that, what did I take away today that makes me a better Hindu counselor? Are there some tools I picked up? Are there some practices I picked up? What will I do? If you ask those 2 questions, what did I pick up as a Hindu counselor to be effective? And then we can take last 10 minutes, some questions and comments, and we'll stop again. All right. So my request is just like a few people here, few people there, few people here, like 3-4 groups. If you can do 4 or 5 people, like 5 people there and 4 people there, and something like that. If you can break up into small groups and have discussion for 20 minutes, that would be very useful. Don't have large groups because then you all need some talking time, I know, but don't make it into large groups. Small groups is better, 3-4 people.
Just before you start talking, my name is Gaurav Rastogi. Some of you must have seen my emails, so this is my face. This is what my face looks like. A couple of announcements. We have a few weeks between now and the next class, so please take this time to go back into the learning management system. If you haven't done so already, please go back and finish all the homework that's pending. It's back due for a few people. Please submit it. If you have questions or comments, please submit those. And you have an e-bite from me for the 4th of November. Please accept, decline, or maybe as the case might be. But we'd love to have you back here and see you there. And the next class after this is November 11th. So there's a few weeks between now and then. So try to keep up with the learning management system. I will record a video with Bob and Carmen so that it will show you how to use the learning management system. We'll send you the video, you can watch it. And if there are questions, please send them back.
What's the plan for November 4th? What is it that they're going to do?
We're meeting here. There's a bunch of presentations and then some food.
Is it the class?
It's right here. It's in this building.
I mean, the topic is what?
It's about the HCI and what we're doing and what our plans are. So just
informational.
It's an
informational session on HCI.
But you're welcome to come.
We have a class next week because it was just part of the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah. So we have 10 weeks in a 15-week period. So 5 weeks are Raj is going to be available.
So no class the next 2 weeks. The following class is November 11th. And prior to that, in fact, with Gaurav will be leading that one.
Yeah.
And prior to that, November 4th is an informational one, which is optional. And I think they are welcome to bring their stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome to bring.
So it's part of the event.
Yeah, I know.
So there's no class next Sunday?
No, sir, no class next Sunday.
Next 2 Sundays.
Next
November 4th, we have it.
The meeting, yes, yeah.
No, 2 Sundays, there's no class, but on the second Sunday,
there's a meeting.
There's a informational get together.
Yes. And bring the
spouse, bring the family members, bring anybody else whom you want to bring.
It's optional, but highly recommended. But either way, please respond so we know we have a count. Keep track. Thank you.
So the LMS system is already operating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all good up and running, but some people haven't.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Please, group discussions.
I'm on the
For me, it was for myself, because I haven't been exposed get a grasp of what's
But that's okay. The part is
maybe for me. Yeah, I mean, the last few slides, I kind of was able to vaguely get some connection, say everything you do there, how they live with each other. And, how we use this information.
I do it right away because it's the easiest.
For me, the whole thing is I need to go back and edit that. Otherwise,
That's right.
okay, so discussion today.
Discussion today.
What are the takeaways?
No, I don't have to. I just say what you want.
Better, effective.
Yes.
You're not going to give it one mistake.
apart from that, you put down some general statements about what's your learning. One thing I'm very concerned about
For me, I'm not reached that stage. I always get the ego comes to me. Even today with my daughter, even like everywhere, I think for me, just like my challenge. The challenge is
recognize that your card has already been lost in the past. Like once you can see that you're done, you are added last card.
see that this is the thing. I think it's because of the past because
we were all
like
learning
very old has this habit of listening for
wow.
when I'm talking to you, my discuss begins that okay, I recognize my actor, I should not exhibit that. But you do something, again, I'm not blaming you. I should be able to recognize. You do something or something happens, it triggers unconscious. Then and come to that square one, you know what? After that, I recognize shit, still.
You can get freedom. And what happens? It happens. No. If you keep repeating itself and putting in your mind, mind goes into a state which is impossible to describe. You have to be in that state to know what's happening. But you are aware, you are saying freedom, and
what I have done is I have picked it up online Google Sheet. उसमें मैं इसको enter कर दूँ. But I have taken a picture of it.
But you find
But ये remote में क्या जाना.
I know that I'm facing, but
you're on the path. I mean, it's like, you already know what your destination is. So I think that.
no, I am facing those challenges. So what I mean is my challenge is accepting the different cultures and also the combined
नाम तो है वो. जाना और जाना
How is so much great? I don't appreciate how is Bhagavad Gita so great? I don't appreciate it. I'm very much appreciated. My parents taught me how to kid. Grandmother teaching me how whenever exam comes, you keep on reading all of this at home. Okay. Still, I don't appreciate all those benefits. 18th chapter.
Otherwise,
and all the pages of all the
That's reality.
I don't see it, but
It's very, very sensitive.
Somebody came and gave like anchor. I learned to memorize anchor or sharing knowledge freely. So then memorization, of course, like I was like 55, I realized that by memorization and also
That's the only place you can bring it in and because they are familiar with hopefully whatever my diction is better than what mine.
No, I don't have any problem with sugar. It's very nice actually find out the dates and months and
so if I can do the hobby, I can do that. So what I realize now, like so one of the things of changing about realization, a little bit of understanding, and it goes on. Now I find it and that's the one that I was saying that you have so many ways to understand it, and eventually, even if your friends कोई बात नहीं and that's the beauty, and it actually like it just background. All of us have like whatever background you want, whatever language. But the thing is, I had to do 1 year. Like it just came out of practice of memorizing. Came to my house, teacher.
actually
He didn't know his one-on-one. It's amazing. So he's my initial
His lectures are there from the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, all the way.
But I think
you are
That's what I mean. There's a
but now I love to what he says is that nobody can tell you. Somebody says, I tell you. Somebody said, and if you don't read the Shastra, after you read the Shastra, you know you don't read the Shastra. Unless you go through it, unless understand the structure. And Swamiji it's a slow process.
Actually, Vedas never began. Vedas are from the face of Brahma, is somebody said it should be, it was, no, it was,
Can you guys
given to the next
conclude and identify any questions or insights?
So in that process,
Please complete.
there is some command or something. Last. So what? There are some he realized that this same he started to see right in the right.
Please complete.
What we know
Yeah, the note he would say there is one which was not, it is based on a commentary now.
I listen and I will listen on chat. Yeah, I'm more interested in my
Thank you. If you see my hand and hear my words, please raise your hand and look at me. If you see my hand and raise your hand and please look at me. Thank you very much for your attention. And can I have quick comments from each group, what you have? So, sir, excuse me, I'm talking to you. So can you please report out what you have talked about so that we can complete the class on time? What were you guys discussing? Are there any things which are coming up? Questions or anything for me or Vijayji? Where are you with all the insights?
I think I can summarize it.
Please summarize.
So
Okay, 1 second. Yeah, summarize it. Okay. So we'll go this way. We'll go from here. Okay. Yeah, please.
So we learned some basics.
Okay.
Now the next thing is like we need to understand what you taught. Okay. So what Manjuji suggested is try to connect some native way. Like for example, she likes Kabir Dohas. From there she reverse engineered to the Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, like I know Vamana, Satakas, Sumati Satakas, which are almost the same thing, whatever we find, but this is easy path for us to reconnect. So that's what like we had to chant the Bhagavad Gita and meditate on that and try to find the meaning so that you might find the understanding in the beginning, but keep doing. Maybe like if I have a question, I can discuss with you guys or write something. So that is the way you start from somewhere closer to your heart and much easier to your path. Keep working on that. That's
okay.
Yeah.
So use the fountain approach.
Yeah.
Start with what you are most familiar with. Now, whatever basics which you have learned, try to connect it and explore it with what you are familiar with and take it forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
And keep in mind that at the end of all of this training, there will be a network of each one of you, and there'll be the information given so you can share with each other. So the ideas that you can pick from each other, that will be helpful.
Okay. Thank you very much. How about your group? Yeah.
Yeah, I was one of the questions. I mean, we were just talking about what I personally, at least, I've known some of these concepts, but it's kind of reaffirmation of what we know, so it kind of enforces our understanding better, and it's quite crisp and clear. At the end, you summarized it really good. One of the questions I had was, are we going to have Bhagavad Gita sessions itself?
It's going to happen. Actually, Gaurav and Ashwini will take a Bhagavad Gita session when you come back on November 11th. That is the session which Gaurav will be able to do.
I see. Okay.
In fact, the specific title is Bhagavad Gita's unique place in the Hindu tradition.
Bhagavad Gita, yeah, unique place in Hindu tradition. Yeah, and they will address that. We'll go deeper into it, build on what we have done, take it to next step.
There are also sessions planned for the spring session.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, lot more in spring.
Lot more in spring.
Yeah. So we applied to counseling situations.
Any other comments from your group?
So we also discussed that, like, that we have been, like, reading that life where we are doing all the rituals. So following all the traditions.
Yeah.
But in today's talk, we got like, a little bit more like wisdom into it.
Okay.
Why we are doing it.
Yeah.
Our own questions got answered.
Okay.
And we also discussed that like, whatever tools and techniques we are learning, we have to that invoke in ourselves.
Yeah.
And like start practicing on our daily life, kind of educating each other, or first like, get insight first.
Right.
And then like, that will help us to become a better person, better counselor, and then we should be approaching the world in a better way.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The Hinduism is about practicing, bringing it, swadhyaya. You need to bring in from inside out. That's when you get in touch with your own inner divine as well. Thank you. Okay, your group.
So we had a little bit of a different conversation in our group. Kaveri has practical experience in helping somebody in distress.
Excellent. Yeah, because you have a nursing background, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, her conflict is getting too emotionally involved to meet the expectation of the
family. What I was helping with this individual, and for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, and then she passed away. And the family wanted me to further involve with them and continue, which was my dilemma, was that I didn't have a time or the effort or the mind to continue with that.
So that's one dilemma as a counselor.
Okay.
And she has also practical experience in helping somebody deal with the issues, and she was able to find some solutions that was appropriate for the family.
Okay.
And that is something that she herself, to be a fulfilling experience. Ajay and I, we are in a little different place. From a ritual practice, all that perspective, I'm not much into that, and neither is he. We understand the significance of Hinduism. We have a lot of appreciation for it. We understand all the basic principles and what it means at the really high level. But when it comes to rituals and stuff, neither one of us has a lot of practicing
experience.
So something that would personally be of interest to us is a lot of the contemporary issues that people are facing in the society. A very good example of Vijayji brought up the breakdown, abortion or no abortion.
Yeah.
I actually, as part of the multi-faith speaker group, I do address middle school, high school children. That it's a very practical issue for them.
Yes.
They will right out ask, what does your religion say about this issue, right? I don't know the answer to that. So I am saying, while all this is good, adult conversations are at a completely different level, but as counselors, I think it would help us tremendously.
Yeah.
If we can look at some of these layers underneath and say, how do we actually,
underage children.
Yeah, what are Hinduism's answers to some of these practical issues that the society is facing?
And it's not that that those examples were not given today. I think Vijay gave many examples, and those were really helpful. For example, the personal experience which you shared about that unfortunate incident of brain hemorrhage for 48 years old, and the example which you gave, that kind of stuck with most of us today in terms of first we understanding
one thing I would say is we have a lot of work to do ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of work to do. I mean, this is a very noble, and it's doable because there are actually people with good answers, but we have not collected it to a point where we can address many of your things. And I think going forward, we are going to have to do that. This is generally said as an experiment.
Yeah.
A year from now, hopefully, we will be able to have examples with, I'm not sure that we have all of the answers about abortion.
I have a question strategies. Maybe you guys can think about it in future classes strategies. My conflict is I did some mistakes in my life. How I realized that there are mistakes. Now as a counselor, I need to, a person approaching me with a similar issue I went through.
Right.
Now I have a conflict. I am not able to do that properly. How can I counsel them? It's like my swadharma, I failed. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I have to bring it down. It's like now I'm keeping a mask and not it's a conflict, it's internally
No, I
conflict.
wouldn't say that. I think you have an advantage
Yeah.
because you can relate to the people.
Right? No, that, I mean, I understand, but there is an inner conflict in me. I failed at right time.
Yeah.
But now I am trying to teach him. That person can also.
No, you can say that was at a certain point. Yeah, learn from it.
Yeah, but I'm having the conflict, inner conflict.
No, I think that,
that is where.
There's an advantage for you.
Yeah, you have an
See,
advantage.
one way in which they call it in counseling context is authenticity, vulnerability. Brene Brain is a counselor, very powerful. You might want to check out her videos on vulnerability. Even though she is not a Hindu counselor, the concept of vulnerability is very much here, that is connected with. So the idea of when you say, look, this is an area I cannot give you an advice, but I can share my life experience. This is the path that I took, and these are some things that worked out. These are some things that I didn't work out. So let me not give you an advice, but by putting a mirror to you, you might want to look at what is it that you want to learn from me. I cannot recommend what you want to learn, but you take what it is. Then what you are doing is, you are not getting into a position of, I know what is right, but you are willing to be open and vulnerable and transparent in such a way they can learn what they can learn. That will actually help your counseling relationship to become much deeper and much more meaningful.
No, I understand that part. I'm struggling to deal with my inner conflict. That like now, I failed, but how can I give an advice?
No, but I think one of the things
that is what we try to say.
You're a more learned person now. You can sell that.
But we'll deal with it personally. Let us see. If you have repeated it 3 times, I'm having an inner conflict. Either you haven't listened to what we said, or we haven't listened to what you said. So what we need to do is, after 5 o'clock, I will stay with as long as you want. Let us find out whether there is a way in which we can help you. How about that? We'll do that. And 2 hands, Mangala, and of course one more group is there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that is, I think it's important for us to recognize that there may be some very deep psychological issues we may not be able to.
Correct. We should not sometimes.
We should just kind of define the scope of what it is that we are able to do, in what areas we can help, and then.
I think the only other thing to add to that is that we hope that with Kadashji and Gaurav and ourselves, we are going to have a network of specialists.
Yes.
So we can be very specific with some questions that we cannot answer.
Right.
And get some help. You're absolutely right. None of us are psychiatrists.
Now we should pretend to
be prepared.
So actually, we'll have a legal issues if we
can help. Maybe
we can help. There's a lot of other people. We are going to have some other speakers that are really specialists.
And so this is called a pastoral counseling, not a psychological counseling. We need to be very clear. What we do is a spiritual guidance. This is not a replacement nor any kind of a way to think about it as a psychological counseling. So that's the reason why I was telling you, the key is to know whom to go to or whom to send it to, rather than we not coming from expert perspective. We are not experts. We are not trying to be. Last, you had a hand up, and then the last group.
But let them finish it, then I will.
Then you last. Okay, last group, please.
I guess we had a little bit different angle. One of the things we talked about was, we understand as it presented. I mean, for me personally, it was a pretty heavy dose of Hinduism, religion, because I haven't been really exposed to in my childhood or, through my, growth. And so there's a lot to absorb, a lot to learn. But at the same time, one of the things Vednathji has been, I think, brought up in last couple of sessions also, we, hopefully in most cases, at least to the extent that we can as counselors deal with, the religion part of it doesn't have to be brought in, especially if there are families which are not Hindu, religion based or, the following that religion. So that was one of the points we discussed. And, we can at least deal with the actual, whatever the problem is, on a non-religious basis, use the techniques, and at the end, the charts that you gave, I think they were more specific, as you explained, hey, how you can use these 2 models, and those were pretty helpful.
And it's important to recognize religion is what it is for you to absorb.
Right.
It is only a Hindu way of counseling.
Right.
It is, we have our own vision, but we should not mistake it to be religious counseling.
Right.
We are not proselytizing, nor we are trying to teach them. That's an important difference.
These are resources available to us,
Exactly.
if you will,
Exactly.
for our own learning
Right.
and deepening our understanding.
Right.
But not for trying to,
Impose
our ideas. Please, actually Hinduism doesn't believe in imposition.
It doesn't, but as soon as you say, hey, I'm a Hindu, this is based on, this is what Hindu.
No, don't.
So you have to be careful how to present it.
Right. So, can we do one thing? Then last question, and then we'll do Shanti part and we'll complete it. And if any of you have any questions, if you want to talk further, I'll be here as long as you want, and I'll be happy to address anything else that I can address. Please.
So there's
one second.
It is not a question. So, Mangalaji's point, I just wanted to comment it. And you already said it in your last statement also. And by nature, Hinduism is pro-choice.
Hinduism?
Hinduism is pro-choice.
Yeah, pro-choice.
That is why we have so many different varieties of the thing.
Yeah.
So coming back to the abortion point, Hinduism is pro-choice.
Okay. Yeah, there is a lot more texture to it. Yeah. We can look at that. Let's look at that aspect. But for that, right, for now, it is not black and white. Can we do this Shanti mantra?
I would just want to thank both Prasad
Oh.
and enlightening, thought-provoking discussion today, and then also at each point trying to bring it to how does it apply to the counselor. I think that was an excellent session.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Did we do Swasti Punjabi or do we do just?
Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Have a good week.
So no class next week, right?
No class next week, and following week we have a session. You are welcome to bring guests, and you are welcome to come to discuss more and learn more about it.
Thank you.
No doubt about it. I did my story all the time.